Hello and welcome to The Deepest Dive, the best, most thorough discussion about Halo Combat Evolved on the internet, dare I say. I'm Ben Hansen, joined by Suri Vasquez.
Hello.
Jeff Marchiafava.
Hey.
And Kyle, the Reclaimer Hilliard.
Hello.
God, how has it taken us 2 episodes of The Deepest Dive to get to that?
Unbelievable.
I don't know. I was the first ever, period.
It's true. Just like this is the first Halo that we're covering from 2001, Bungie's masterpiece. This is a huge Game Club discussion. This is technically the second part of that Game Club discussion if you're just jumping in now. So we're covering the back half of Halo 1's campaign. We had an earlier video on YouTube if you want to go check that one out where we cover the first half. And then next week, we're going to be covering the multiplayer of Halo 1. We've never had a multiplayer-focused discussion for The Deepest Dive. I think it should be really fun. At some point before the next discussion, we will be streaming Halo 1 multiplayer as well on MinnMax's Twitch account. So give us a follow on Twitch, throw us a sub if you're feeling generous, and that's MinnMax Show on Twitch if you want to watch us actually play this thing to some degree. So this is the back half of Halo 1's campaign. We had people, supporters specifically at patreon.com/MinnMax2ends, submit a bunch of comments. We had hundreds of people playing along with us. They waited for the post to go up on Mondays on Patreon and says, hey, give us your thoughts. And then people submit their thoughts, and that's where all these comments are coming from. If you support us at any tier, you can submit a comment for next week's discussion or future episodes of The Deepest Dive for other games in the future. Also, if you support us at that $5 tier, then you unlock the podcast version of this discussion, all other Deepest Dives we've ever done, interviews moving into the future, in the past, early access to the MinnMax Show, early access to Leo Vader's Watch Later. Also, another quick plug, if you want to watch us record this type of stuff live, including the MinnMax Show, you can support us at the new Backstage Pass tier, which is the new revamped $10 tier. You also get to vote on games we play every single week. That's all that stuff aside. This is time for Halo, everybody. Woo! Master Chief, getting it done. Back half of this sucker. Jeffem, what'd you think in general of the second half of Halo 1 Combat Evolved?
Well, it was similar to the first half in that there were a lot of ups and downs for me. Maybe more downs than I was expecting, but
did you enjoy it less than the first half then?
No, I wouldn't go that far. There were some sections that had me cursing, but beyond that, still generally a positive experience. Fun to go back and replay this thing that I played 20 years ago and have at least some aspects of it still hold up. And also to kind of look at the more critical things, having now had 10 years of experience, kind of quote unquote professionally reviewing games and thinking about them more critically.
So you think you had a Game Informer-esque score in your mind that was going up and down as you're playing through Halo 1 again?
No, but there were things that, maybe irked me a little the first time I played through, where this time I was like, oh yeah, this is totally unacceptable. Like this never should have happened. This wasn't, my opinion that I didn't like these things. Like, this is just very questionable game design.
Right. Kyle, you're a big Halo fan. What'd you think of the second half, going through it again here?
I think the second half of the game is actively worse. I think I had a worse experience. Like, I'm surprised you're being so nice, Jeff. I think like the second half of the game, say for a few spots, like there's almost a line in the sand where you can be like, this is where the game goes downhill to me.
If I may summarize it, Kyle, is like your peak Halo just that second level of Halo? Is like driving around in the Warthog, little sandbox enemy encounters? That's what you want when you think of pristine Halo in your mind?
Yeah, I think so. And there's definitely a few of those moments in this. Like, I'm not saying like every single second of this second half I was like, oh, this sucks. But like, there were fewer of those moments, and it was funny that you said the word familiar, Jeffem, because a lot of these levels were working your way backwards through levels that you already played. Yeah. And like the big original level, like the library, is like the most uninteresting level to me, period. I do love the end of the game. We'll get to that later, but I do really like the end. I think that's cool. But yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of positivity of like encounters are still fun. I still had a lot of fun moments of big explosions happening and things like that. And like, they're like, it forces you into the Banshee to fly around, which is fun. Yeah. But like overall, this is the second half of the game, I think, is not as good.
It's a weird thing where I think the second half of the game is almost more interesting.
I think in story ways, I think it's more interesting.
Yeah, and I think that carries a lot of weight. So Suriel and I have never finished it before, and so going in blind on anything past like the first 3-ish levels, I do think it's like, okay, there's more story content here than I would have thought. I think even characters like Cortana are more interesting than I expected. We'll get into that with community comments and stuff. Definitely, every time I wasn't going, what do you want me to do, game? Or going, God damn it, this checkpoint. Every time it wasn't those two sentiments, I was having a great time with this game. And I enjoyed it more than I expected. Suriel, broad take, what'd you think of the second half of Halo?
I'm with Kyle in that it feels like it does kind of decline pretty sharply as you go along. There are some like pretty cool spikes, like in terms of like the quality of the encounter design later on, but I think for the most part, like the repetition of the levels and some of the ways like the game's more dynamic checkpoints kind of come into play felt really weird, and I think that kind of, when that push came to shove, I think it kind of showed some of the flaws in the way the game is designed. But I think it still ends up being good. Just I think that it is nowhere near as good as like the first few levels for sure.
Yeah, and the novelty of that. Okay, we had people submit wonderful comments at patreon.com/MinnMax2ends. What do y'all think is the most common comment? Number one comment submitted repeatedly.
Last time it was swapping visuals, right? Was
Yep.
the one? Okay.
Swapping visuals back.
Swapping visuals back. Do I see swapping visuals back?
Was it maybe a reconsideration of the impact of the flood? Kind of
that
like
is a
how
very
that
specific
changes
take.
things?
Definitely people talk about the guilty spark level. I think that's probably second, is like that pivot. Yeah,
which like as we'll get into it, like I think it's that first, the guilty spark level, like that was like, I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. Like I got to go back and remember like this was a really interesting twist, and it still is. Like it's not diminished, but it just happens that I know what it is at this point.
Yeah. Jeffem, most common comment?
Was it punching through Keys' face like a rotten pumpkin?
There's only one comment about that. No, number one most common comment, God bless the shotgun. Shotgun rules. Just shotgun slobber fest, which, hey, is legitimate. Like, I had a weird thing playing through this entire section where I'm not a big FPS guy, and specifically the type of FPS guy that I am not is that type of person that's playing like new Doom, and it's like, oh, the feel of that shotgun just blasting and running. That is not what I enjoy at games. It's not my thing. But as I was playing through this section, I kept thinking about that. Like, why am I enjoying this so much, but yet I have never gotten into like a Doom game? But why is it so satisfying with that shotgun just to run around and blast these flood? I would argue in an endless way in some of these levels, but it was always satisfying. Is there just something magical about that Halo 1 shotgun that you think elevates it beyond other shooters?
I think the fact that they hold it back completely until the second half of the game is honestly, I mean, maybe too big a word, but kind of bold, to like save that important of a weapon to only exist in the second half of the game. I think maybe helps. I don't know. I mean, we got a good look at that reload animation. I don't know if that's like it somehow screened. It burned into my LED TV somehow. That reload animation of him putting shells back into the shotgun.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I think it fills a very specific niche of like what you need for that shotgun to do. Where it's like, it kills everything in one shot basically, and it gives you a very wide range, which you need once, as soon as the flood starts flooding you literally all the time. Like, you need that nice big area control. One shot will get everything out of my face, and none of the other weapons kind of fill that specific slot.
You're right. It's satisfying visually, the sound design, and then it's also the most practical thing. Yeah, you're totally right. That's probably the secret ingredient there.
I think it does, like to what Jeffem said, it does also become an associative thing where, like when you first get it, it does get you a lot out of like these really hairy situations. So you just come to associate it as like, that's the get out of jail free button, is that if I find more shotgun ammo, I'm going to be able to get out of it out of whatever predicament I'm in, whereas a lot of the other weapons aren't tuned to that. Which is weird because it's, they don't really set up any like in-game reason for that to be the case, but it's definitely a thing where it's like, oh, cool. You just happen to find the most effective weapon against the Flood right after meeting the Flood.
I think
but
maybe
it is
Guilty
kind of
Spark
like,
planted it for you, yeah.
right. So it's like this psychological thing of like, here's a very stressful new opponent to fight against, but also here's the cure, here's basically like the counter to that. So I think it does end up being like, this is my trusty friend because this is the only thing that's going to kill the Flood as efficiently as I need to right now.
Yeah. Rory Sublet just asked, is there a better shotgun in gaming than Halo's? Is that number one shotgun in gaming?
I mean, as someone who plays a lot of Destiny, I would say that there are better guns that Bungie itself has made.
Better shotguns?
Yeah. I think Legend of Acres is maybe my favorite shotgun in any game ever, which is like this exotic that it just fires lightning bullets that just eviscerate anything. In its wake, I think it's the only shotgun that they rank in the same category as like rocket launchers because of how powerful it is.
All right, well, I guess that seems like a winner if it's shooting out lightning blasts.
But I don't know. I mean, with Destiny, like there's like a million weapons in that game, and as far as just like a single, everyone finds that same weapon, and it's just like core to the design. Yeah, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to like.
I would say that there are like few guns more iconic, I think, in terms of legacy or whatever. But I think maybe the Doom shotgun would probably be the one that I think people would go to as like, this is the shotgun in video games.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this entire playthrough of Halo, it's been really fascinating to factor in what I thought I knew about Halo 1 just from playing so much multiplayer and then actually playing this, where if you would have said, top 5 shotguns in gaming, or probably some Doom shotguns in there, I don't think I even would have thought of Halo 1. And now in retrospect, it's like, I mean, the second half of this game is just shotgun the game. Like, it's crazy that I thought I had a good idea of what this was. And that carries over into the story and the Flood, which we can talk about in a big way here. Just for a little preamble, Ben Shively wrote in saying, hey, I ordered a special Duke controller for Xbox just to make my first full playthrough of Halo as nostalgic as possible. And I love that idea, that weird third-party Duke licensing thing. I forgot they even made that.
I would love it if they had like a prompt where if you plug that into like the PC, even it just changed all the button prompts to use the black button or whatever, use the white button instead of whatever button they did.
Actually, I think if you plug it into a PC, it just goes, which I think is a weird driver issue.
It's the USB cord back on it.
Synonymous Joe says, hey, during last week's discussion of the original versus updated graphics, nobody mentioned that the original graphics used in the Master Chief Collection are not the original Xbox version, but from the slightly broken Gearbox PC port. The port has a variety of visual issues, most noticeably with bump mapping and shaders. Importantly, these issues often mean that the game looks artistically different than it did on the OG Xbox. Considering how iconic the visuals of Halo are, I think this is a really big deal. It's not just your memory deceiving you, it's actually... it actually did look a little bit better back when you first played it. And not to be too negative, as the game is great and I'm having a great time revisiting it, but a lot of us in the community have been encountering technical issues, mostly involving sound with the Master Chief Collection. I know Flaming Queso hasn't been able to pause his game without the sound completely disappearing. Given how important it is, I really wish that we had a truly fantastic and polished remaster, like something on par with the Blue Point's Shadow of the Colossus remake, because Halo deserves it. Great points, for sure. It's important to... Because even... We'll talk about it next week, but I think even like the Halo 1 multiplayer, they include like those PC maps and stuff, right?
I think, yeah, and the weapons. You can put a Halo 1 disc, original Xbox disc, in your Xbox One and play it, right? Can't you?
I would assume so. I mean, they do have thousands of games spanning 4 generations, so I do think...
I heard that, actually.
Yeah.
I heard they're all playable on Xbox Series X.
There we go. You need to get the Series X to play Halo 1. But yeah, that's a good point. I would imagine so. I don't know how many people even tried that, but yes, thank you for pointing out the technical issues.
Yeah, I guess, not having played the original, I wasn't, I wouldn't be able to be privy to that stuff. But like the only consistent bug that I found was whenever I would first load into the game, E wouldn't pick up weapons. I had to crouch to pick up a weapon, which is I don't know if it's like a weird key binding thing that I had, but like anytime that, like when I'd have to reload a level in order for it to start working, but it was this weird thing where I had to pick up weapons by crouching near them, which I guess makes sense, but was not how you usually do things.
Yeah, that is strange. Okay. 5 levels to go through here. The 6th level, the first one we're talking about is 343 Guilty Spark. The first thing this made me think of is a very specific nerdy thing, but I remember it really captured my imagination. Back when I was at Game Informer, I visited Bungie 3 times, and I visited 343 for Halo 4's cover story. Tell me if this is insane. In, like, near Seattle, 343's address is 434. Isn't that weird?
Coincidence? That is
It's just
weird.
a weird coincidence. Yeah, but my brain would have melted if I would have like found that building and just be like, what the hell? Or
I mean, the address is literally 343 434 whatever road, right?
right. But hang on, now I'm freaking out because that was the old Bungie building, but it wasn't where they designed Halo 1. So I'm trying to think of, did they name Guilty Spark after that? But no, that would have been after. You know, that's some deep cut address nonsense. Okay, let's actually get to it.
And then they added it back into the game after they made the studio. So this weird like lore change that 343 made to the game that they were remastering. It's very weird.
It's very complicated. 343 Guilty Spark, the first half of it at least, maybe before the pivot. What'd y'all think of that?
Scary.
Scary.
Creepy. Yeah.
Yeah, I was one where, despite I prefer the old graphics throughout a lot of this. With this section, I think like the forest and stuff, it really looks a lot better with the new graphics, I think, but it does remove a little bit of that atmosphere, makes it a little bit too bright. But like there's still stuff like the radio chatter that's kind of scary feeding in, and then obviously you get the helmet cam to relive all this stuff and get to see the soldiers saying, I've got a bad feeling about this. It feels like it's a cool tone. It almost feels like a first pass on a cool tone. It's like, oh, if they're going for this tone, I feel like if they just had, obviously now, another pass at this level, they could really make it exceptional. Whereas now it's one of those where I can squint and be like, this is a cool idea for a level. I see what they're going for here.
Yeah, that seems to be the takeaway, is that like it's very evocative at first, and then they're like, oh yeah, I really nailed the vibe here in this first part of the level. Do you think you can make the rest of this? And they were like, no, we don't have time. So they just said like, okay, then we'll immediately go into the underground, facility.
Right.
I ran into a weird thing this level. I didn't really swap a lot. Like I was intentionally trying not to swap to the new visuals very much. But there was one sequence where before you know what the flood is, there's like green goo dripping from the ceiling.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like that's a nice tease. But if I switched to the new visuals and it disappeared, like there was no green goo dripping from the ceiling.
Yeah.
Which was like,
Really?
that seems important to have missed,
Yeah, that's surprising. Chris Hellman says, I love all the creepy little things 343 Guilty Spark does to set the mood for the reveal. If you look closely at the beginning of the level, you can actually spot the flood jumping through the trees. It shows up on the motion tracker. Then the lack of resistance and dead covenant in the structure are further lending to the mood. As a kid, it took me years to even advance past this level, I assume. Definitely stellar environmental storytelling. And Andrew Burns commented on Chris's comment saying, also in the old graphics, you can see flood spores in the air and residue dripping from the ceiling in some of the rooms before the reveal. It's absolutely horrible level design, but great environmental storytelling. That's weird that they would remove that for the remaster. Like overall, I think they did a fine job of the remaster. A little bit too bright in some spots. Obviously, I'm happy it exists, but it's those level of details that make you question, like, why get rid of that dripping? We need that drip. Robert, that dirty drip. Robert Gardner says, there was a soldier who started firing on me in this level, spouting crazy things. I sat there taking round after round, hoping he would come to his senses, but like a wounded animal, I had to put him down. Did anyone else do the same?
Yeah, and go ahead, Jeff.
I just walked around the corner and left him.
Just left him suffering.
I shot him and then walked around the corner and had that revelation. I was like, I could have just walked around the corner. I didn't have to do this.
Yeah, it's not like he's getting up and following you.
Apparently, I guess there's in the novelization, Master Chief walks away. He does not kill him.
I love that you know that.
I read it, so I was, fulfilling.
Yeah, I was role-playing the novel throughout most of this experience. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Kyle broke kayfabe.
I played this level twice, and so the first time went through it, and I just dodged him and ran away because I'm like, okay, he wants me to kill him. And then the second time, it's like, I have no time for this. Just immediate pistol to the head, like, moving on, baby.
Did you say it in Master Chief's voice? Did you say, I don't have time for this?
Yes, exactly, yeah. But let's see, Travis Morgan says one of the best conversations in the game occurs during the flashback cutscene in 343 Guilty Spark. The group of Marines reach the inner sanctum where the flood have been kept, and one Marine notes how hard it will be to get in. Keyes tells him to get to work, at which point the Marine puts block on the door, taps 3 keys, and it slides open. You gotta love that future tech. Just thought it was funny. And thanks for finally getting me to play this great game. Thank you, Travis. Luke Strain asked, did anyone else notice that during the Jenkins helmet video, the Marines used that fancy unlock gadget on a door that was already unlocked? The light was green. I know the Marines AI was bad, but come on. Maybe it's just like, just green for Master Chief. Maybe that door won't slide open for the average Marine. Needs to.
You gotta wear green.
No, I like the narrative that they tried to hack like a Starbucks slide open door where they're like, well, we can't open this. There's no handle on it. And as soon as they put the machine on it, this machine that we planted on it must have been the thing that made it slide open, not the proximity thing.
I was amazed how long that sequence was. Like it's like the longest cutscene of the game is just the aliens helmet cam stuff.
Also, how is Master Chief watching that? Like, is he like holding the helmet like up to his head, like looking inside of it?
Second helmet.
Puts the helmet on the helmet.
That's so stupid. I didn't even think about that. Or maybe he just did like a quick swap of like, whoop, like puts that helmet on real quick.
I'm also curious about
Don't look.
How common I think was that in games? So, like the idea of there being any kind of like VCR-esque artifacting or like, video cuts like that, because I'm sure at the time it felt really novel, right? Like even though it was, more or less lifted from movies and stuff, but in a game it must have felt like, oh, this is a cool thing there. Like this is very distinct.
I thought it was really cool at the time. Like I was really impressed by it when I first played it. Like both like what they were sort of revealing in that, because like that to me is like the most narratively interesting moment in the entire game.
Right.
I guess that and finding out what the Halo actually does, I think are the two big moments to me. So like I was really sort of enamored with it back in the day. It's funny to watch it now. I still appreciate it, but it really does look like, what's the term, machinima, I guess, where it's
right.
Like, it looks like they were just using the sort of stock animations. It got the job done, but it does look very kind of still.
Always a working formula. Rooster Teeth launched their entire outlet based on that guy. It works.
Yeah.
Especially the scene where the one Marine falls through the door into Master Chief's arm is just
take my breath
probably
away.
Supposed to be comical, but I laughed at it.
Yeah, I like that shot too before where Chief like sneaks up to the door and is like, whoa! Like there's a lot of weird kind of cartoony Chief moments in the second half that really made me laugh.
Hanson and Sorial, did you guys know about the Flood or what the Flood was? I mean, they'd appeared in other Halos, Suriel, so maybe you'd seen them, but I don't know if you guys, was it a surprise in any way, or?
I knew what the Flood was, because, like Halo 3, that you kind of can't ignore them, but I guess I didn't know how the reveal of it was structured. I knew that the Flood were in the Halo somehow, but I didn't know that, that they were that directly connected.
Yeah, and I don't want to point fingers, but Tim Turry spoiled it, and it's so stupid to complain about a spoiler from 2001. So what I knew starting this was that I knew obviously the Flood was a thing. I had no idea what it looked like. I was trying to think of like, have I ever even seen these things before? Maybe in like a Game Informer top 10 at some point if they were ever included, but I've never really seen gameplay clips of them. I knew it was just like the Flood was like a herd or a horde in Halo that you have to kill at some point. But like I said, a tease in last week's episode, if you put a gun in my head, I wouldn't have been able to tell you, even the Halo 1 shotgun, I wouldn't have been able to tell you if it was Halo 2 or Halo 1 that had the Flood in it. And so then when I was talking about playing Halo 1 with Tim, he's like, oh, so you haven't like gotten to the Flood part yet or whatever he said. And I was like, damn it. Now I know that it's in Halo 1, because I think this would have been that cool pivot. I would have had that moment of like, oh, it's Halo 1, okay. But I still had a ton of revelations in this section, like, not knowing what they look like, not knowing that they were going to be carrying weapons. Like, there's a ton of stuff that I had not factored in. I just, like, there's even stuff like in the library, just popular gaming discussions. It's like, well, everyone complains about the library. I know it's like this labyrinth. It's really annoying, blah, 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 blah. I had no idea that the Flood was in the library. For all the discussion about the library throughout all these years, everybody just talked about the layout, and it never seeped into my brain that, yeah, it's a confusing labyrinth combined with thousands of Flood attacking you constantly.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I mean, another shout out to naming at Bungie. Great name for like a zombie sort of, yeah.
Wait, I was going to go with the library too. I also think is a cool name for a level.
It's all good. I mean, but the Flood, I don't know, it just always stuck with me as just like a good word visualization of a zombie sort of horde attacking you, and it's just like, I don't know, it's not a term I ever like had to learn. It's like, oh, the flood. Yeah, that's intimidating. That's scary. I can see why you would associate that with basically zombies.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, beyond the obvious, like, biblical connotations, it does have like this very like grandiose aspect of like, oh, the Forerunners just called them the flood because like that's what they do. Like, it's not a thing where someone specifically named it. It feels like it does kind of allude to like a very historic kind of precedent.
Yeah, I haven't thought about the Bible thing, of course. I'm sure Halo fans know the exact name. Do you know the name for like the little, what I just called like the mites, like the little baby floody babies?
No, I'm not sure.
Floody babies, I think.
It's floody baby. That was a revelation as well. I was like, oh, I'm panicking, and then you realize like they're basically just popcorn. I mean, there's not a real threat from those guys. If anything, it's just like, why is my health going? Oh, okay, there was one of those little idiots behind me, but I feel like you breathe on them and they go away. So that was a shock, at least unnormal, you know.
The tiny ones I almost ignored for the most part.
Yeah.
It's when they had shotguns and or rocket launchers that they got pretty deadly.
Those rocket launchers, man. When they have rocket launchers.
It's basically just Nemesis. I loved it. Just like these huge guys with the rocket launcher. People in the backstage pass. People in the backstage pass, the live version here, they say those things are called infection forms. Does that make sense? That seems like a weird name for a singular thing, but multiple people said it. Grizzled Gaming submits a comment saying, hey, as a complete Halo rookie, the first 5 missions seemed all right. Then I played 343 Guilty Spark. Wow. Talk about taking a game and turning it on its head. The tension in that level completely set me on edge. I also liked that we got to see what happened earlier through Jenkins' helmet cam before fighting for your life to get out. I don't think a singular level has ever changed my perception of a game more than this one did. I was all in on this game from this point forward.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It does mark a big change in the game, because it's like, it's interesting because like the Covenant is a really good enemy, and it's made up of multiple aliens, and that's really cool. And at the halfway point in the game to discover, no, there is a completely separate threat that is going to mess with both of you guys. All of everybody is like, is very cool.
And the part that I love too is it's not just, okay, there's a new threat, so you're fighting 2. Then it's, okay, then there's a third threat with the Sentinels and Guilty Spark. So there's 4 factions at play here in just the first game, which is pretty surreal that in the first game they pack these many perspectives in. Do you remember first reactions to the Flood back when you played it for the first time, Jeff and Mirko?
Yeah, I remember it being, I mean, basically the same things that you are talking about, having that, except I think it was just more technically impressive too at the time. Just like having that many enemies coming at you was not a thing that, you know, was happening.
Serious Samish, but yeah.
Yeah. Plus I was also younger, so I think it was a little scarier or just more intense of a, you know, I think the atmosphere worked better way back then.
Yeah. I mean, I guess in the marketing, they don't want to hit the survival horror aspect, but it is weird that at times it does feel like a survival horror game in this back half.
Except that you have like 200 shotgun shells instead of, 5.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Tommy Carver Chaplin says 343 Guilty Spark was the first mission that changed everything for me. Not only did it first click why this game is quite special, but it also completely changed the way I played the game. I stopped being slow and strategic and found myself panicked, urgent, and would take any opportunity to dodge mobs if possible throughout the rest of the game. How did 343 Guilty Spark change your feelings towards the game, and was there a moment for you that sold the game in general? This is jumping ahead a little bit. We don't need to completely go towards it, but I think a moment that changed the game for me was like the beginning of the 2 Betrayals level, which, we'll get to in a bit. But just like the discussion between Cortana and Guilty Spark, it's like, oh, there's so much more going on here than I thought there would be. But of course, when you think of the lore hounds of Halo, like they were turned on by something. There has to be something in here. And it's like, okay, now there's so much meat on this bone in the second half. Fred DeNovo says, I love the survival horror feel the game takes once the Flood shows up and the slow build up to finding them, like the Covenant in the forest seemingly attacking another entity that you can't see and coming across areas where a battle has taken place. The second half of the game is my favorite, for sure. I guess that's, I should have paid more attention to just those battle areas in the forest and stuff as other clues that something bigger is happening here.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that people really like the second half as much as they do. I think story-wise, I think the second half is infinitely more interesting than the first half, but it is definitely the sort of repetition and layout of the levels that kind of brings it down so much for me.
Yeah.
In terms of story, that's where Halo gets interesting, I think, is in that second half for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of level repetition, there was a point that I had to laugh in this level because it seemed like the design was made to just get me turned around specifically. Because I came into one room and it was kind of one of the longer, wide rooms where you're going across kind of a trench that goes down in the middle.
I know that level well, yeah.
Yes. And there's a door straight across, but I didn't know that I was supposed to go in that one. So I went into the one on the side.
Yeah.
And when you go into it, it's basically just a square that takes you all the way around in a circle, and then you come out the same door. So I went in that one, went around in a circle, and then came back out, and it's like two identical doors on both sides. I'm like, wow, I have no idea. Like you literally just put me in a closet and spun me around in a circle and then pointed me back out into this, mirrored environment. Like, where the hell am I supposed to go now? And it didn't help that on both sides, once you go through whichever door you pick, you go through, and it's like the exact same environment anyway. So it took me a while to figure out which way I was supposed to be going in there.
I know. And all those little side rooms where it's like, okay, it's the side room where there's basically nothing in here and then just a little purple square on the floor. It's like, okay, I've seen 300 of these things. And I think maybe that's why coming across those battle areas didn't have enough of an impact on me, because I feel like so much of the game has been me wandering around and seeing scorch marks from grenades and corpses, and it's like, okay, I've already fought in here, just because I've been so turned around that, okay, I just assume I already did that. I don't remember.
There are also so many...
I gotta charger real quick. You guys keep...
Okay. There are so many instances of there being twin rooms where it's you enter from one area and then you go into the second room and it's it's identical to the other one except for this one difference, and that's the exit. And so you're basically playing I Spy with the environment to try to figure out where you're supposed to go. Which is, I feel like, I wonder if how much of, since everyone was kind of looking to this as a way to do console shooters, I wonder if one of the things people kind of looked at this and said okay, well, maybe one way we could improve on this is to just have the waypoints be more consistent and more common and kind of make the experience a little bit more guided. And that's kind of, ultimately what led to something like Call of Duty, where it's just follow this person, right? That this feels like the start of that conversation is okay, well, if the levels are designed in this kind of linear, more cinematic way, it kind of helps to constantly push the player in the right direction.
Would you all prefer if the remaster was even more aggressive with that and just had Cortana popping out of your head being this way, chief, and just having even more visual indicators of where to go? Because it is the biggest problem with Halo, if you're going into this thing cold, is just repetition of environments.
I mean, certainly give players the option at this point, so that when I do go into a room and I'm stumbling around, just give me a button that I can press to prompt that kind of thing.
Yeah, just the dead space.
And be no, you were supposed to go in this room that completely blended into the wall that you couldn't see. There's a ramp there that went down, so there's no indication.
Or even just I know the maps would not be that interesting, but give me a map and show me which rooms I've already been in. Just so I know that wait, if I go through this door, is that one that's new or old? And again, like we mentioned last week, it's just so confusing when you run into a room, do the combat, spin around in circles, and then it's just okay, now this way? Nope, I think that hallway looks familiar. But they all look familiar.
I mean, they have it built in, they are willing to throw a marker on screen to tell you where to go.
Right.
But they just don't do it. It's always useful, but when it's the most useful is when it doesn't show up, in those complicated labyrinths. It would be great to just be this door, this of the 3 doors in here, that's the one you need to go through. That's all we would need,
Yeah. They're very selective about when they use those objective markers, and it always seems okay, you guys could maybe stand to be a little less selective about that stuff, but...
Yeah. Zachary Ink submitted a comment on Patreon, says, move over, pistol. The shotgun is my main gun now. Noted. For the level 343 Guilty Spark, I appreciate that they don't introduce the shotgun until halfway through. The player has to deal with the new and horrifying enemy type with ineffective weapons, but then you get that shotgun as a whole different battle. It's great against elites, too. So I almost had the shotgun equipped for the second half of the game entirely. Yes, shotgun is lore. There's no doubt. To the point that then it was weird in later levels where I'd have a different loadout, and then the flood would be back. It's like, what? I didn't expect the flood to be outside of the library. Like, I gotta find a shotgun again now? I don't know where that is. Zach says, lore-wise, I appreciate that the flood are not mindless zombies. They know how to repair and operate the technology of any species they encounter, and their goal in the game is to repair the human and Covenant spaceships on Installation 4 so they can escape and continue spreading. You wouldn't expect one of those waddling carrier forms to be a great engineer, but just goes to show that you can't judge a book by its hideous, fleshy cover.
That's cool.
That is true. So those little mites, the little babies, the infection forms. Thank you. Yeah, infection forms. So those are like the spores that are going out, and they're trying to latch onto Master Chief to turn him into one of those other forms. That's their role there.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
I also wonder if what the lore reason is that they just absorb all the traits of the things they absorb, right? So maybe like the flood inherently does not know how to repair a ship, but if they take over an organism that has that knowledge, they can use that.
That could be.
I mean, I think that's a lot of the Aliens inspiration. I mean, this level is very inspired by Aliens, and that's how the xenomorphs work. They adopt the properties of whatever they consume.
Yeah. We've seen Prometheus. We understand. John,
I was thinking of Aliens 3, but you know.
Oh, because there's like the
best one,
dog.
right?
Is it like the dog alien in Alien 3? Is that this?
Yeah.
I haven't seen Alien 3.
Yeah, someone at Bungie, they saw that scene and they're like, yeah, we can do that.
Oh, hell yeah. Is Alien 3...
Picture failed. We will succeed.
Should I ever watch Alien 3, Kyle? Should I ever...
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, I think so.
Go out of my way to see it?
I even like, what's the fourth one? I think there's a lot of fun, weird stuff in that one, too, because it's like a French filmmaker, so it's weird.
Okay, all right. And then 3 was David Fincher, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he did a good job despite all the crap it got.
Wow, There we go. John Califatis says, after Kyle so graciously relinquished to me the title of biggest Halo fan, I must regretfully vacate my title. There are some people in the Discord of MinnMax that really know their Halo. I never liked the Flood back when I first played Halo. I don't think I like them now either. The problem is that 3 of them can have rocket launchers in one encounter and they don't stay dead half the time. I really hate the Flood in the game, but I've come around to the Flood in the story, and I like that. I think that's fair, but I think those are more intertwined than you think, John, because it's such an impossible problem for game design to solve, where the Flood need to be overwhelming, and like you need to realize that these things suck, but still need to be fun to play against. And I feel like you get the vibe right in the second half of Halo, like, God, this is too much. These things cannot spread beyond Halo. But still, I like shooting most of them in the face with a shotgun.
Yeah, I think it's a nice case of your in-game goals being, coinciding with the actual goals of like, I would prefer not to fight these anymore.
Yes, exactly.
If only that were my entire plan, that the entire reason I'm here is to not have to fight these anymore.
Yeah. Wally Ansari submits a comment on Patreon, says, I was only 6 or 7 when I originally played Halo. I remember loving the first mission so much. It was so different from anything I'd ever played. And then the Flood appeared. I couldn't continue the game because I was too creeped out by their appearance. It was only when Halo 2 came out, and I was 8 at that point, that I overcame my fears and completed the game, but I thought the second half of Halo Combat Evolved was pretty fun playing through it again. Oh, good. I'm glad you've grown up, Wally. We appreciate it. Alan Liebold says, in the first part, someone brought up how the original graphics are darker and creepier, and that's especially true in the Flood levels. The updated graphics are way too bright, which removes the atmosphere that's so strong in the original. What stood out to me the most were the little Flood parasite guys. In the updated graphics, their coloring is more pronounced, so the ends of their tentacles are a bright red that really pops. Every time they attack, it looks like they're trying to pummel the target with tiny boxing gloves. Maybe it's just me, but I couldn't unsee that, and it was very funny.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, I think, with the remaster, that they do feel compelled to not just like update the textures, but also kind of make the designs more intricate. So it can't just be like this bulbous thing. It has to have all this pulsing thing that go back and like add ideas that wouldn't have been possible before, and how much that can change your perception of it. But yeah, I think like the remake is definitely brighter. There were a couple of times when I forgot I had a flashlight that I would switch to the newer graphics just to be able to see, Where it's like, okay, where am I headed? Okay, if I press tab, I'll make the screen brighter just because of the art design, so I can actually find my way. But it's like every time I looked at it, it's like, oh, this is kind of weird. Okay, and then I would turn it back as soon as I got to.
Yep, basically. Diz Crowell also prefers the Flood and the OG graphics because he says they're a lot creepier. So in this level, you then run back out into the forest, and I thought it was a cool idea of running out with those other Marines that are out there. It feels just like, a bit of an RTS then, where you're then running through the forest with the Marines. Again, better in concept than what actually is happening in the game. But the idea is you're running with this herd of Marines, the Flood are attacking, and then the Marines are just slowly getting picked off until the point that you're completely on your own, effed. And then Guilty Spark comes out and his Protoss drones come and save you.
I mean, there's a lot of better in concept, I feel like, because conceptually, I like the idea of having to make your way into a facility and then make your way out. That's a cool idea.
Then you'll like Halo 1, yeah.
Yeah, but it's that's the thing. In practice, it is just a lot of repeated levels in reverse. It's like playing the game in mirror mode or something,
Right. But I still think having those Marines is cool.
I think
around
it works best there because it's not. It's once you're out in the forest, it's just a dead sprint. Which is there's no. You learn pretty quickly. It's I don't need to fight the Flood here. I just need to get out. Which is cool.
Yeah.
Which is why I kind of like the end of the game too.
Yeah. And in terms of being surprised by things in the second half, I had no idea. I knew that Guilty Spark was a thing in this game, but I had no idea that he had those. Are they called Sentinels in the game? I think
Sentinels, yeah.
So the first time I came across those, it was a moment of what is this? I have no connection to what this could possibly be. And then they explain, his function is to prevent the Flood from leaving the area, and then you buddy up together. Andrew
and inspire the creation of Wheatley. I think that was an important part of
and the Destiny Ghosts.
And the Destiny Ghosts.
This is one of those things that I've just been kicking myself God, how much do I think I know about games that I'm just missing out on for never having finished it? It seems like it's very important. But just the idea of covering Destiny for so many years and not understanding that the ghosts are very clearly inspired by Guilty Spark. I had no sense of connection between those two.
Yeah, I feel like most of the races in Destiny are inspired by Halo because the Cabal are just the Covenant, the Flood are the Hive, and the Sentinels you could point to are the the Vex, or the Forerunners would probably be the Vex or something like that.
Okay.
So it's all Destiny very much feels let's just take this concept and then make it into a non-copyrightable form and then kind of flesh it out a little bit more.
There we go.
Yeah, legally distinct Halo.
That's right. It's called the Cabal, not the Covenant. They're totally different.
Andrew Vala submits a comment, says, I love the increasing sense of isolation the game builds in the second half. The Mission 343 Guilty Spark is really the last time you encounter other living humans, and following mission environments are progressively chaotic and antagonistic. At some points, you're not even the enemy's biggest concern, as seen in the Flood versus Covenant battles. This was not what I expected when I first played Halo, and that subversion of expectation is what made Halo so special for me. I think that's really well said, Andrew. Yeah, it is just that feeling of we're on our own. Cortana is not really talking to me much, and that probably lends to that feeling of, am I in the right place? Am I going the right direction? But I love that that Master Chief can just be such a powerful figure, but at the same time, so much of the second half of this game, he's a protagonist, but he almost... What's that?
A people pleaser or an AI pleaser.
Yeah, he's not that cool. He's just, for a lot of these fights, he's almost irrelevant. He's moving things along in his own way, but it's hey, you're part of a bigger picture here, buddy. No,
right.
Shut up and do our bidding.
I think that actually does he's kind of in that realm of protagonist where he says just enough to make you feel like he has a personality, and then you fill in the rest of the gaps with the best version of it. So it's he and I think the thing that I got away from Master Chief here is that he's a very cool, calm, and collected kind of person who is just I'm here to do the job. I'm here to get out. No muss, no fuss kind of person. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very easy to see that as a series of positive traits of this guy is very logical. He's going to do what he needs to do, and he always makes the right call, right? There's no instance of Master Chief just being a complete screw up. And so he has that, and then he has he does it in a very matter of fact way that I think is very easy to and I think that's how at least at first people latched onto him, because he doesn't reveal a ton about himself. but the what he does say kind of points you towards like, okay, here's this kind of like character you can easily map all these positive traits onto.
Yeah, and he is, lightly jokey enough, which is something I didn't expect. Even just that bit where it's towards the end, but where Cortana's like, we need some sort of explosive to take care of this. And he's like tossing a grenade up, bites into it like an apple. And
the pull-up bit later on where he's like, you're in the Banshee, and then she's like, pull up. And then, oh, you did that on purpose. And it's like, I don't think he ever gives a definitive answer, but it's like, just the things that Cortana says about him kind of do as much to flesh him out as a person.
Yeah.
It's mostly Cortana, though. Like,
that's true.
She feels like a good kind of juxtaposition to, I guess, a lot of the stuff that we put onto Master Chief as being like the calm and collected guy. I think she has a lot because she says so much more and she has so much more personality in the way that she's portrayed that I think...
Yeah, and I think
they pair well together.
I think it's important that the kind of he does have that one jokey moment with the grenade, but a lot of like his humor is more projected onto him by Cortana, which I think is important in fleshing him out because it isn't like the thing that he sells himself on, right? If he were to behave in a way that says, "Oh, I'm a little bit of a stinker," right? Like I think that would personify him very, very differently than Cortana saying that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Colin Perkins wrote in with some fun facts about Master Chief from Halo's extended universe, if y'all are interested.
Sure.
He was abducted at the age of 6 by the order of Halsey, Dr. Halsey, and conscripted into the Spartan 2 program along with 149 other children with similar mental and physical prowess. We got that. Mm-hmm. His first name is John, but his last name is, Kyle, do you know?
Smith.
117?
Classified. His military designation is John 117 because he was the 117th candidate to be identified for the Spartan 2 program. Spartan 2 program was originally...
Wait, so Serial was right, actually.
I guess so, in a way, yeah. So, hang on. I have a lot of general Halo questions here. The whole Spartan 2 program, do they start getting into that in Halo 2, or is that just in the books, or where do they actually say and talk about the Spartan 2 program?
I think in the games, Reach is where you're going to see the most of that.
Really?
Yeah, because the idea is that, like, and it kind of, man, it's always tough to make assumptions here. I could be totally wrong about this, but they're like, I mean, it even kind of feeds into multiplayer a little bit that they're all, these like cyborgs, I guess you could say, like that have been genetically manipulated to become these like super soldiers. And I think the idea is like a lot of them got, if not all of them, got wiped out during Reach, and Master Chief is like the last one of these super soldiers that they have.
Yeah,
I could be wrong about that. I could be wrong, but like I think that's sort of the idea. Is he's like the last of these super soldiers that were created to help fight the Covenant.
I don't know that. Do they even mention the Spartan program in Halo 1?
No,
I don't know. I think maybe they call him a Spartan.
Do they?
That's like okay. Maybe that's I don't know, but yeah, I mean that's the idea of Reach is like you're playing as a group of Spartans,
right?
And Master Chief's not in the game at all, except for that one little cameo.
Yeah. Where he's tossing that grenade again. It says, "Ain't I a stinker?" Let's see. Spartan 2 program was originally created to combat the human insurrection that manifested from rapid human expansion within the Milky Way galaxy. After years of training, Master Chief's class was put through a series of augmentations that gave them super strength and heightened cognitive abilities when they were 14 years old. Only 33 survived the augmentations without physiological deformities.
Wait, so is Master Chief just a Witcher? Is that...
Yeah.
Yep. Is he also sterile?
Oh, he's quite sterile.
Oh, okay.
He's 6'10", and he weighs 286 pounds. While wearing his Mjolnir armor, he's 7'2" and weighs 995 pounds. Wait. So, man, think about how strong he is. Think about how much that armor weighs. Can't they make lighter armor?
They always say the armor adds 500 pounds.
Jeff, how old is Master Chief? Actually, are you older or younger than Master Chief during Halo 1?
Older.
How old are you?
38.
Master Chief is 41 years old during the events of Halo 1.
Dang.
Oh, he's like
I got a couple years then. All right.
Yeah.
I got to bulk up.
Before you can lift 1,000 pounds of Mjolnir armor.
Flip a warthog.
I'm going to go get genetically enhanced.
Yes, I'm here for my Spartan 2 physical checkup, doctor.
Sir, this is a Wendy's.
Just give me 1,000 pounds. So let's see. The library. Let's start with the easy stuff. let's focus on this guilty spark fella. I wanted to know what he was all about. I just couldn't hear what the hell he was saying at any point. So like, okay, I'll turn on the subtitles. Then even that didn't help me because I'm so busy fighting the stupid flood in the library that I was glancing down when I could, but I feel like he is just monologuing throughout that level and it's just not giving me anything. Am I nuts?
No, this is when I said, "Oh, this is just Destiny again." Where it's like,
so Destiny.
here's a character monologuing, and like I guess you can intake as much as you can while you're also shooting a bunch of crap.
Yeah, and he's kind of humming along, and it's that tough thing because it seems like he's designed to be a little bit annoying, and so this is one of those things where I was trying to think about. Why did 343 name themselves after this annoying character? I know he's important and maybe he changes his attitude later on, but like for this section, it's like he's just the annoying guy that slows you down in the most insufferable level in the game. Why connect yourself to this guy?
They were born of a guilty spark. What can I say?
Oh, I get it now.
I do. I like the humming.
Yeah.
Even back then when I really had very little patience for any kind of, it's weird how my opinion has changed on this, but when I was younger, I would play stories like this, and I would get frustrated by the humor. I was like, this is a very serious thing we're experiencing right now. We're fighting zombies. We're trying to save the universe.
Right.
But now I actually kind of like it. Like I actually appreciate the comic relief and I like the weird humming. Like the importance that he lends to the whole situation is so much smaller than Master Chief fighting for his life. He's just like,
right.
let's go. Hey, Reclaimer, what are you doing? Hurry up. What are you dealing with back there? Like I kind of like that tone.
It makes sense because like to him, this is like, a routine kind of like rat extermination thing where it's like, oh, we're just going to follow the procedures and like, oh, where are you going? Like we have to do the thing because this is the thing that I'm supposed to do. We are like, I don't know, like, A, I don't know why you're freaking out so much. And B, like, at the end, everyone just dies. So why are you freaking out?
Yeah.
How are you getting emotional right now?
Yeah.
Am I reading too much into it to think that with a lot of those sections, the sections of just like, wait here while I open this door, is he testing Chief? Is there a little bit of that, or is that putting too much into it?
I think that's putting too much into it, I think.
Okay.
I think he's like Suriel said, I think he just has a series of switches he needs to flip, and he found this thing that will help him do it.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think he doesn't care. Like, he's just happy that if it's alive at the finish line, like that's all he wants.
It is also this weird shot to call at the beginning of the level of the library to say like, oh yeah, we're going to have to open 10 of these doors. So like the moment you do the first one, you immediately start thinking like, I'm going to have to do 10 of these things.
There's got to be something that derails it. Flaming Queso.
The thing that I remember most about the library is just walking backwards and watching that shotgun reload animation.
Yeah.
That's like, that is my memory of the library, and it was only sort of like playing it again now. I'm like, yeah, this is the library to me, is walking backwards, shotgun reloading. Like that's the whole level,
I wonder how many kids would have grown up to be librarians. Would they learn to hate libraries from this level?
Because they'd get so lost.
They'd get so lost. The humming would drive you insane. Real quick on this front, Flaming Queso writes in, says, my least favorite line in the whole game that made me mad as a 12-year-old and still frustrates me is in the library level when Guilty Spark says, odd, you brought such ineffective weapons to combat the flood. I'm over here mowing down waves of flood with my shotgun while the little sentinels fire their worthless laser beams at the flood, and Guilty Spark does nothing but float around and hum and talk to himself. This guy... Yeah, that's a great point. How dare he?
They didn't add the energy blade till Halo 2, so he just needs to chill out.
Oh, are they good against the flood?
Yeah, they're great. It's great, dude.
That does sound fun. All right, Suriel, the library in general, what'd you think of it?
I think I went into it with expectations that it would be like this like uniquely terrible level, and it wasn't great, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Yeah. I definitely thought it was going to be more open-ended in that, you have to find you have to find your own way through all of these floors and stuff. I remember because I know my brother played through it at one point, and I was just kind of watching him play, and it just seems like, this is like the same hallway you were in like 10 minutes ago. But I thought there was going to be more self-direction, but you more or less just follow Guilty Spark around the entire level, it seems like.
Yeah, I think it has become a bit of a lightning rod where when people want to complain about the level design in Halo 1 for the last 20 years, they just say, oh, the library. And that kind of like summarizes a lot of the general frustrations in a lot of these levels. Probably is the worst.
It's the most repetitious for sure, because you are seeing like levels that look almost exactly the same. You are taking the same kind of turns and exits through geometry that just basically looks identical, right?
Well, and because you're fighting Flood the entire time, I think you die a lot and have to redo like you're also redoing sections in sections that are repeated all the time. It all adds up into a very frustrating way. But for me, it was not as bad as I remember, and I have also been struck by how many other levels were just as bad in terms of repetition as this one. The library is the only one that I remembered so distinctly as being that way. But,
right.
I mean, it's definitely a Ocarina of Time water temple reputation situation where it's like it is the weakest but still good among like a series of, solid shooting levels. Like where Ocarina of Time, like the water temple is probably the weakest dungeon in that game, but it's still an Ocarina of Time dungeon, so there's still a lot of good things about it.
Based on my experience, it's unfinishable. Several times, Kyle, I've gotten to that water temple, and it's just not going to happen.
3DS version where they added more arrows on the walls to help you out?
No, I didn't, but that reminds me of the library. Did you all know about the arrows on the floor in the remastered version?
No, I didn't.
No.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Yeah, I remembered this from when it came out, that I remember they added something to the library. And if you're playing with the updated graphics, they actually put arrows on the ground pointing where you're supposed to go in the library, which is wonderful.
Nice.
Yeah. So
it's also funny how easy it is to get lost in that level when you have a floating orb that's taking you where you're supposed to go. But it's sometimes it's just like, where the hell did he go? He has completely disappeared, run off to the next area while I'm still getting mowed down by these freaking bloaty exploding guys.
Yeah,
right. They're the worst.
Bloaty explodies. Yeah.
Again, it's so weird.
Amazing names, bloaty explodies.
Yeah, just such an air of austerity. But like the thing, it's so weird because Guilty Spark. Floating in and out of levels is such a weird thing for them to do because the level basically trains you to follow that one character throughout the entire level. So the moments he's gone, you kind of lose that leash of like, okay, well now what do I do? Like the second he's gone, even when it's mostly just get to the door and defend it.
Yeah,
it's just like the fact that you kind of expect like, well, at some point something has to be like I have to take a different path. Something has to change here, right? But it's usually you're just taking the same very similar path again for the 10th time.
And I found maybe like a 60% success rate throughout the second half that every time I was stumped and stuck, I was like, I'm just going to sprint it, and it turns out it's fine. Like I was dying a lot in the library, and then at a certain point, I was like, I'm just going to run past all these guys and go get that index in the middle of the floor thing. Like, okay, apparently that was all I needed to do. I don't know why I was beating my head against the wall trying to defeat this endless wave.
That ends up being a thing,
Yeah, and that's like the weird thing about the checkpoint system and maybe enemy spawning, where I can't tell if there's just areas where they're going to keep spawning enemies at you until you move to a certain place, but I definitely changed my strategy in this level of just run to where I'm probably supposed to get to, kill the enemies there, and then that seemed to trigger checkpoints more often than not.
Yeah.
As opposed to like trying to slowly inch your way along, and it's like, holy crap, these guys just keep on coming.
Yeah, and I think this is maybe the start of like them not being as tight about like telling you when you should just sprint past encounters because there are so many enemies you can possibly take them all, and when you kind of the whole you progressing kind of hinges on like, okay, if you kill enough of these guys, a thing will trigger and you'll be able to keep going.
Yeah. I liked about halfway through the level too, and it's like, okay, that seems like about it. Then the name of the subsection of the level is literally "Wait, it gets worse." It's like,
yeah,
come on, you guys.
In hindsight,
Spencer Botine submitted a comment on Patreon and says, "Remember how I said the Silent Cartographer is one of my favorite game missions ever? Period." Well, the library is one of the worst missions I've ever experienced in games, period. It's just endless hallways of the Flood constantly killing you in cheap-ass ways, making you start back at checkpoints 10 minutes prior. The whole level lasts 30 minutes longer than it needs to be. Honestly, F that mission. Message received.
Yeah, fair.
I think the first few times that you are just like insta-gibbed by something with a shotgun or a rocket launcher, like there's no like good feedback for like, oh, something just killed me, and I guess it must have been one of those guys with a shotgun.
Yeah. Somebody brought up like the sound of the shotgun, guys. Jordan Halmdahl, is there anything more stress-inducing than the noise of a shotgun blast from one of those foot soldiers in the game? No other enemy killed me as abruptly as often as those freaking jerks.
Yeah, that and the bloaty explodies just coming around a corner where it's like, well, okay, how was I supposed to know that? And half the time they have like been spawned or placed there, and they just wait until you get within a proximity for them to come out. And it's like,
yeah,
I'm gonna pop on him.
Or there's like those, we all know it, those like little trenches where several times I believe there was health at the end. So whenever I was in a panic situation, and that's the brutal thing too that I didn't realize, is restarting those checkpoints with the same health that I have. Most games would give you full health, but like keeping you at one red health bar, so you're just frantic. I'd always go down into those little slits in the ground, and then of course there's no health, and then bloaty exploding marches down in there with me. Like, over and over. Yeah,
and then another reason I think this level feels so repetitive is because the pacing of it is the same. It's like a one note pace of just constantly enemies flooding you the entire time. Whereas at least in other levels, when it's repetitive, you will have an encounter, and then it's kind of, okay, now you're walking to the next area. You have a chance to breathe and get some ammo and kind of recollect yourself. But this is just so much of that, just the same pace. You know, there's not a lot of strategy to it because everything just bum rushes you the entire time.
Right.
And so from a gameplay perspective, or a gunplay perspective, I guess, it's also very repetitive.
Mm-hmm. Dunder says, greetings, Spartans. I imagine much will be said about the repetitiveness in the back half of the game, so here is the story from Marcus Leto, the Halo Combat Evolved prototype designer, as quoted in Vice's History of Halo article. We had an interview with Marcus on the MinnMax show a while ago, actually on a MinnMax interview on our YouTube channel. So Marcus said, there is no way we would be able to build everything for the story, which worried us. We were up against a very hard deadline, so I floated the idea of reusing some of the environments, and we shamelessly reused at least 3 or 4, played through backwards, modified a little bit, but we really needed to do it. We had created what we thought was a fun game, but we had to cheat pretty significantly in order to wrap its campaign and deliver a story. So we understand the fallacies of the game inside and out. We knew what we had to leave behind because we just couldn't finish it otherwise. So they're very aware of the 3 rooms that we got used to.
In retrospect, like, and even at the time, like, they made the right decision. Like, it was a good use of their time, and it like does help the story of the game to get in somewhere and then get out. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, so I think it's really smart, even though I have my complaints now playing it. Like, I think it was a good call, you know?
Yeah, for that bigger picture level design. But I think in terms of, you know, it feels like a layout or a map that you made in Time Splitter's level editor versus here's this room attached to the same room.
The library specifically.
The library, just other levels, of just, you know, the square circular room that you go back to later on in this section. It's like, oh my God, back to this thing again.
Yeah. Every control room doesn't have to be exactly the same. Mm-hmm. You know, like the Forerunners could have been capable of building more than one frickin' room.
Yeah. Tyler Carver asked, did any of you all notice a difficulty spike? It seems after the introduction of the Flood, specifically in the library, I started dying more and more frequently, even while playing on normal. The Flood as an enemy are just ruthless, and I do think they do an excellent job of constantly making you feel like you're not safe. There's definitely a difficulty spike. I felt it in a big way with the 2 Betrayals. That was the one that I was beating my head against a wall with. Library, I didn't think was too bad.
There's less value in taking cover once the Flood show up. You know what I mean? Because like early on when you're fighting Covenant, like you can get out of the way to let your shields recharge. That's a lot harder to do against the Flood in general. Yeah. You know, so I did find myself dying more.
Yeah. Alex Mauve says, I understand why people don't like the library, but I had a blast shooting all the waves. The little crawlers are fun to shoot, and that balloon popping feeling was so satisfying. Weirdly, they look like balloons. They look more like balloons about to burst with the OG graphics. With the new graphics, less so, but they increase the size of the shreds and pronounce that feeling in a different way. Also, one-shotting the combat types with the almost indefinite shotgun ammo just put a smile on my face. And also, what's up with that one song? We've heard that one before, the one that plays when you fight the Guardians at the end of the library. It sounds like it's straight from Beverly Hills Cop. I don't know what song it is. Maybe Halo superfans can know, but they're absolutely, I took that same note. There is a song in this game that feels a lot like Axel F from Beverly Hills Cop, which, hey, no complaints. It's an amazing soundtrack.
Can't go wrong with that one.
That's right. Let's see. That's basically the library. Then you get to 2 Betrayals is the next level, where you bring Best Buddy 343 Guilty Spark over to Cortana. They meet for the first time. And I love this. Just like seeing those two argue and Master Chief just being wrapped up in this thing larger than himself and a bit of an idiot. I just love that tone of like, what were you doing, Master Chief? Why were you following this idiot's advice from Guilty Spark? And Guilty Spark's like, yeah, why didn't you keep going along with it? You were right there. You were right. And he's like, it's a subtle BioShock moment, of just Master Chief. Like, I guess I was just doing the objective. I don't know why.
Yeah, speaking of Serial saying that Master Chief never does anything wrong, he did almost blow up the entire universe.
No.
Well, I mean, that's anyone could have made that mistake. Like, as someone who is constantly led by AI by the nose, I think it's pretty relatable.
I wonder if, I'm sure in some Halo expanded fiction, Chief deals with that guilt of how close he was to pulling that trigger and helping out Guilty Spark, ironically. I'm sure at some point it's mentioned, so please let me know. Look at this. Wade Wojcik wrote in. Friend of the show, former coworker. Well, hang on. Before we get to Wade, we should probably unpack this thing a little bit more. So in this discussion, we learned that Halo doesn't kill the Flood. It's a weapon that kills their food by wiping life from the galaxy in, was it 25,000 light year radius? Was that?
Yeah, something like that. And then it can also like reach other halos and like extend that radius even further and stuff like that. I think.
Oh, really? I don't. Yeah. Did they say that?
That might be later. Maybe that's.
I think so. No, I remember. I definitely remember. Which to me, it felt like, I guess, not learning about Halo, from the source. I was kind of more prepared for the idea of there being multiple Halos to be a bigger revelation than it was. Because I think it's sort of like an alien like isolation where it's like you're kind of like you realize you're on the one Halo and that's kind of this big thing, and then you realize, oh, there's more than one of these. They're all over the galaxy. I thought that was going to be like a bigger deal, but they're just like, yeah, and I guess it'll sometimes activate all the other ones that we've built.
Well, you couldn't see under the helmet. Master Chief, whoa, and his eyes got really huge. Yeah.
It's weird. I've always found this to be like an effective threat of like the galaxy's going to come to an end. Like that's such a sci-fi thing of like, if this weapon goes off, we're all dead. But for some reason, it like really works for me here. I don't know why. I think maybe it's the surprise of it, or just the way they explain it. Like makes sense to me that robots would be like, well, if this flood is a real problem, we don't need organic life. Like let's just wipe it out, and then that'll kill the flood. Like it just. I think it's explained well, where it makes it feel like a better threat to me than just like maybe even like, I mean, Mass Effect has a similar threat in it, even where it's like I'm less accepting of it in a weird way.
Yeah,
or it just feels like a sci-fi trope there, which is okay. Like there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, there's kind of like the ominous threat of a lot of the more kind of cynical sci-fi fiction of like, yeah, we're just part of a larger ecosystem, so we can safely be. It's like in modern parlance, we are the virus kind of thing. Where it's like just. You're not like the end all be all kind of organisms, right? Let's just get rid of it, which Mass Effect deals a lot with, humans kind of being in the middle of the ladder in terms of races and stuff. But I guess they don't. Do they give a good justification for why the Halo couldn't just kill the Flood instead of all organic life?
I guess to me, it was just you can't single it out. Like you can't just tell it to kill one virus.
So the Flood is included, right? So the Flood would also be wiped out, but it would kill everything.
Like if you have a bug infestation in your house, you can't just kill the ants. Like you have to kill everything. It was kind of like how I sort of perceived it.
If you have snail, you can use salt, and that's not going to kill ants. All I'm saying is have you tried salt on the Flood?
That's what it does. Just it salts the food too much. Yeah. What is the threat of the Flood for Guilty Spark and the Sentinels? Like, why are they scared of it? I guess I don't know.
That is a question I asked out loud that I don't know the answer to. They just don't like it. It's just gross.
I wonder if they just almost see it as like this is our thing. We're going to have to like, well, look, we are the people who kind of invented the Flood or like are containing the Flood. So they're kind of our responsibility in a way.
So because the Forerunners are so scared of the flood and the Forerunners made Guilty Spark and all that stuff. So I guess it's just they're designed to stop the flood no matter what.
Yeah, like they made AI to help them stop the flood, and this is the solution the AI came up with, even if the Forerunners were like...
Yeah.
Word.
Yeah, that makes sense. God, amazing timing, everybody. Wade Wojcik, dear friend of the show, #1 Halo fan, without a doubt. And he had a fantastic fan project, Under the Banner of Heaven. Does anybody remember Wade's film?
I don't remember the title.
Wade
but
Wojcik.
you can find it online. I'm sure it'd be easy to find. Just Google Wade Halo. Dawn Time.
Dawn Under Heaven is the name
Dawn
of it.
Under Heaven. There you go. Okay.
Wait, I think. No.
Nope.
Yes, it is Dawn Under Heaven. You can find the full thing on YouTube. It's very good. Anyways, Wade says, to the question of why do elites say what? If you listen closely, it's actually Wogue. As in Wojcik, because it's a pitch-shifted sample played backwards of Sergeant Johnson's yelling, "Go, go, go!" Who knew such a simple modification of Johnson's line would become one of the most iconic parts of Halo? Isn't that crazy?
That's like some NES, like clouds and bushes.
That's some NES cloud bush stuff, no doubt about it. And Wade says, in an earlier version of the story, when Master Chief returns to Cortana in Halo's control room, she's mad with power and wants to take over the galaxy. I'm so thankful Bungie decided otherwise, forever saving the Halo universe from the evil AI that wants to kill all humans cliche. A winky winky, says Wade. Dunder submitted another little interesting factoid, saying in the opening cutscene of 2 Betrayals, Cortana uses some unexpected phrases like watching you two toady about and telling Guilty Spark to sod off. This is because the original plan for Cortana was to have a slight British accent, but the idea was scrapped since the voice actress had recently played a British actress in British character in another game, and the two sounded too similar.
Interesting.
Yeah, seems like she should have a British accent. If I just saw that picture, I was like, oh, it's an AI. I would assume that.
I was wondering about that sawed off thing. I was like, oh, that must just be, that's how they talk in the future.
It is a reference to the sawed off shotgun, I think. Tommy Carver Chaplin says, I think one of the biggest surprises for me was how charming Cortana was as a character. And I love the dynamic between her and John. Is Cortana, God, there's a lot of gaming history questions here that have been driving me insane. Is Cortana the first example of a consistent voice in your head that not only relays information and direction, but is crucial to world and character building? It reminds me a lot of GLaDOS, obviously 343 and Howl Before It All, and Ghost from Destiny.
I mean,
the character in your
Navi
head
from Ocarina of Time has always been my example of that, which is like, I think just really smart game design of having a character with you at all times to be your voice.
But
you know
the
what I mean?
easier version
I don't
of
think
it
it started with Cortana, but I think Cortana is a really well executed version of it, you know.
God.
Well, I think Cortana benefits from it not having to be separate instances of dialogue the way it is with Navi, where it's just like, okay, now I'm mashing A to get through all this dialogue versus I'm walking and Cortana is relaying this information as I'm moving.
I would love to talk to Bungie about if Navi was an influence at all. I hadn't even thought about that, but of course, yeah. And you think about, that character in your head, there's the voice thing. It's so much easier than the Naughty Dog buddy character system of, no, I have to animate this other character jumping around, trying to keep up with you, or Kratos and Atreus.
Someone leaving their cassette tapes everywhere that you go.
Right. God, yeah. Please let us know in the comments on YouTube or wherever, or you can tweet it at us. Other early video game buddy characters that are just in your head or are fleeting. I think it's a really fun piece of gaming history.
Yeah. I mean, it was a top 10 list. I don't know if we ever did it at Game Informer, where it was like the top 10 characters in your ear, I think was kind of how we were like sort of trying to figure out how to explain it. You know?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. 2 Betrayals. Did y'all have any thoughts on this level in general?
That level's hard.
It's hard.
This is the one that became for me a lot of like, it was less about the encounters and more about finding the Banshee. Where's the Banshee? Okay, I saw it when I died that time. Now I can get to it.
But still, you sprint to it, and then you get in, and there's just everybody shooting it out of the sky immediately. It's like, oh my God, trying to find this right level. Because, I was lost for a while trying to figure out, what am I supposed to be doing here? I have to get all the way up there. I feel like I've circled this around. Okay, there's always a Banshee hiding somewhere, because the structure of this level is you have to go drain your shields at these pillars of light as a guitar wails. And there's 3 or 4 of them that you have to trigger in order
there's
to
three.
Okay, in order to do something to the Pillar of Autumn, so you can go back that and then blow Halo up.
This was actually an example for me that where it was like the reused level I think was executed decently.
Yeah.
Because of the Banshee. It was like you can it basically it's like, all right, remember this level? Now you have a much quicker way to travel through it, and we need you to go hit these couple of points where it didn't feel as repetitious, even though it was the same exact level.
Yeah.
You know?
My question, though, is how does Cortana know that it's called a Banshee? Are these just the human names for these things, or would the Covenant be like, yeah, the Banshee, of course?
I don't know. I kind of like the idea of the human names. Like that's what the military has assigned that vehicle that they saw in one encounter.
But they didn't have any moments of the origin story equivalent of, soldiers being like, oh, that vehicle came in like a ghost. You think you'd have something
but they've
like
been
that.
fighting the Covenant for years at this point. You know what I mean? Like this isn't like everything they're encountering isn't a surprise to them. Like
you're right.
They've been fighting these enemies for years.
I hadn't thought about that. Yes, of course. I was surprised in this level too that the Flood were there. I thought that they were going to be fully isolated to the library. That was going to be the weird one off. I had no idea then basically the rest of the game, the Flood are going to be a factor.
Yeah,
is the library inside the Halo somewhere?
Well, it'd have to be, yeah.
I think so.
It is? Okay, I mean, that's what I figured. I don't know if it was like on a nearby planet or something. I don't know.
Right. You're out of your mind.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you for
How
apologizing.
dare you, Kyle?
This is insulting.
If we hadn't already stripped your #1 Halo fan title.
You're falling down the rankings as we speak.
Oh, no.
I do like I always like it when there are, multiple enemy factions fighting each other. That's always a cool thing to see.
Yeah.
I do think that the level after this, I think, does a better job of kind of pointing you towards that. Whereas I think I was so caught up in how, like, I think I must have ended up skipping so many of the encounters just because of like anything that was outside. I basically just wanted to sneak my way past or like run past. And there were so many moments of like, okay, I have like no health. I'm about to die. Please. I'm like crossing my fingers, sprinting to the Banshee, hoping I don't explode. That felt like so much of my time with this mission was just like getting past like one of like maybe 3 checkpoints where I was just stuck constantly and was trying to find different ways of like, okay, can I do this? Okay, I guess not, because they're all there. Like there's just this huge collection of enemies. I'm out of grenades, so I guess I'll just have to figure out if I can jump and sprint my way past them.
Yeah, and especially like seeing those tanks out there in the field too, where it's like, I don't know how to take this thing down. This thing is just stumping me. It takes so much to take one of these things out. It feels very Battlefield, right?
Well, and it's just so easy to fly the Banshee and shoot at the same time and not just directly nosedive into what your reticle's aiming at. Like, that is just as like I can handle that control scheme for, the Warthog and like the Ghost and stuff. But when you also have your altitude to worry about based on where you're pointing your reticule, and it feels so counterintuitive to aim at the ground and then press backwards so that you're kind of backing up in a flying ship just so that you keep your altitude. It's such a weird control scheme. Yeah,
absolutely. But gotta admit, it does look cool when you get in that Banshee. I love like the little like pod
when you
thing.
take off.
Yeah, no, just like a little overlay that like he gets in. It looks so cute and cozy in there.
Like a hang glider.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like Commissioner
in
Gordon
that history piece, they mentioned in the Vice history piece, they mentioned that a lot of the Covenant designs were inspired by like crustacean shells. So you see a lot of that in like the Banshee specifically, where it just looks like this. It looks like the exterior of like a crab claw or something, or it's just so many of these. Here's like this one flat kind of curved design for everything. I like it. I think it's cool.
Yeah. Specifically the section of this where it's just called the final run. That was where I reached my wit's end of just, I don't know how many times I have to do this. Because like there's even a little snow cave to the left that I found eventually. I'm like, okay, if I go in there, that'll be a shortcut to get to the Banshee. And it's oh no, it's just a dead end snow cave. You actually have to just go out in that section and shoot the Flood on the right, move over to this section over and over and over again.
Yeah, is that where the door doesn't open all the way, so you have to drop whatever vehicles you have? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. I think that's the start of the final run.
That was like one of the toughest spots for me, just with the rocket launchers and stuff like that.
Right. Yes, exactly.
There is also just enough of the like, okay, I entered this, I entered the area where I'm supposed to, deactivate it with my shield. But there's just enough of like, okay, which room am I supposed to, how do I get at it? Like, here's like twin rooms, like I was mentioning earlier, of like, okay, I'm in the second half of this area. So I'm looking for like the one difference that lets me know where I'm supposed to go. Sometimes it's a console, sometimes a door is just open. So there's just enough of that where you're like, I don't know where to go. and then you come outside, and then so you're kind of like assaulted on all sides of like, okay, some parts of this level are confusing, other parts are just really hard but simple, and like you know where to go.
Yeah.
So I think this to me was like the most frustrating level.
Yeah. Jacob Haslam submits a comment, says, when coming across the Flood and the Covenant battling in the later part of 2 Betrayals, I always have that wow moment. Watching tanks, hunters, elites, and the Flood battling was something I hadn't seen before. Then you have to fight the remaining enemies. It's rare that we have these large-scale battles in new games, let alone that Halo did this 20 years ago. The latter part of the game does reuse assets, the library being the worst, but the scale and intensity is really taken up to another level. It provides memorable set pieces that stay with you after you finish the game, which in my eyes truly makes it a memorable experience and why it's still thought of fondly today. Yeah, I feel like an idiot for whenever I've been referencing having but enemy factions like fighting each other and you're just kind of watching. I always went back to talking about Last of Us as a Left Behind DLC. And Last of Us Part 2 deals with this in a big way too, of just having the two sides fight each other. But is Halo the number one go-to reference for having enemies fighting each other?
Well, I mean, I guess if you want to, like, if it's just about these two other factions, there are, I think, StarCraft maps where the Zerg and the Protoss are fighting each other.
That's true, but you don't get to see it that much. It's always in that fog of war, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you have a probe or, like those sentry units, you can sort of do it, but then you have to explicitly, like, make this unit so you can go watch them fight.
Go. Yeah, make the Sentinels. Yeah. Ian T. Clark says, I've been getting my butt kicked in the last half of the game. About halfway through the 2 Betrayals mission in an outdoor area, I finally learned the lesson. I just let the Covenant and Flood zombies fight it out while I hid like a baby and then cowardly snipe the remaining survivors from a distance. MLG #1 gamer!
No scoping them.
Quick side note, this is my first playthrough of any Halo game, and I'm having a lot of fun. I'm committed to playing through all the main games before Infinite comes out. Hopefully 5 will come out on PC before then. That's an awesome goal.
That'd be cool.
Glad you turned around.
I also wonder, I guess, going back to the idea of like there being multiple factions, I wonder if Bungie meant for people to just watch these things more than maybe we would now, because I think it felt like a technically impressive thing to watch all these different factions go at it.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there is this element of like, oh, if I have the option to watch these two fights kind of reduce each other's numbers, why wouldn't I? And so maybe they designed the encounters around like, okay, just watch them fight for a little while, wait for them to kind of thin themselves out and then go in, versus now it doesn't feel as kind of like technologically impressive. So you just kind of wade into them more readily.
Yeah, that's a good point. I can see that. I like there's a part where you're on our favorite snow bridge with the glass, old snowy bridge that we know so well, but it's like, but there's
Bridgy, they call it.
That's right. But there's the other frigid bridgy over there where they're all fighting each other. But there's a moment then I really liked, and I played through it a bunch of times. I kept dying apparently, but it's like you're like halfway across the little frigid bridgy, and then just like 1,000 of those mites come out. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where it's like, they just like surprise you all at the same time. It's a really good moment. I did that a
million times because that checkpoint was not great.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I was able to time the grenade perfectly to like, all right, let me get these guys out of the way. Rocket launcher dude's back there. Okay.
There we go.
It's a bit like Groundhog's Day sometimes.
Yes.
Where it's just like, okay, I know there's 2 guys in here. I'm going to shotgun them. Then I'm going to go around the corner and more guys are going to come out. And it's like, by the time, or I guess like that Tom Cruise movie.
Yeah, Live, Die, Repeat.
Kill, Death, Repeat or whatever. Yeah.
Kill, Death, Repeat.
Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
No one knows what it's called. It's the good Tom Cruise movie, yeah.
Where it's just like memorize the steps, when to just book it right through there, and I'd like to see a final cut.
My frame of reference is the Palm Springs dance sequence.
It is, yes, it is the Palm Springs dance sequence, no doubt about it. Good film.
It's weird they talk about that in the Vice history, yeah.
Blake Kibbe submits a comment, says, I spent a lot of time in the second half running back to the previous checkpoint, trying to get 1 or 2 Flood to follow me so I could more easily pick them off. The fact that it was so easy to cheese the game might be a negative, but back in the day, I thought I was pretty smart for exploiting the game in that way. Did you guys do a lot of cheesing, kiting, all that stuff?
Yeah, I still kind of, I like that stuff. Like it's one of those things with like classic GTA games. You could like set things up. You could set up dominoes before starting a mission, know? Like if there was a guy that was running to try to escape, you could like park a car in front of him and then start the mission up and like make it really easy. Like that is in games so much less these days. And I kind of miss it. Like I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
As a wise man once said, that's gaming, baby.
Is that Leo?
I don't remember. It was Nostradamus, I think. Dead Space Trace says, I know we've already touched on the sticky plasma grenades, but I got stuck in one of the open snow areas on 2 Betrayals because a Banshee kept dive bombing me every time I ran out into the open. Finally, I said, screw it, and I waited for him to come around, and once he flew low enough, I chucked a plasma grenade up that perfectly stuck on the underside and blew the ship to smithereens. I don't think I've ever felt more powerful playing a video game in my life. That does sound very good. A good sticky is just the best. But when you get stuck with a good sticky, no good.
That real sticky.
It's terrifying.
Icky.
It's that icky sticky, yeah. Next level, keys. Suriel, we finally get to the bottom about whether or not Keys is a bad guy. And the answer is...
He's the Flood.
He's the Flood.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, it's just what an irrelevant question from last week about whether or not he turns out to be evil. It's like,
It sure
you're
was,
to find out.
It was funny.
Kyle,
what was that, Jeff?
Me and Kyle really held our poker faces on that discussion.
It was like, I was absolutely just like,
what face won't betray the fact that it doesn't matter?
Yeah, it is like, that does not matter in the slightest. It's so funny.
But this level starts out with a really cool, like, impressive flying tracking shot, like showing off this environment, showing all the Covenant fighting, stuff like that. And then Cortana teleporting Chief, which it's one of those things of, wait, what? Where they're just like, oh, we can only do this once, so it's really got to count. We can only teleport you once, Chief. And then this is some good pratfall stuff. Teleports him in upside down, then he falls. I love that.
Yeah, the slide whistle really brought it home, I feel.
Yeah, I thought it was weird when his Mjolnir armor pants then slowly fell down as well. Seems
just
like
clanged on the floor.
But it's funny, like, having this silly comedic moment while the Gregorian chants were still going, just like Halo epic, and meanwhile it's like, whoa, slipping on a banana peel. But still, beautiful.
I appreciate them taking the time to be like, look, this teleportation thing would really solve a lot of problems, but we can only do it this one time. It's like throwing away your cell phone in the middle of a contemporary, or at the beginning of like a contemporary movie. It's like, they can't have this because it's going to solve all their problems.
I think somebody made a supercut of like cell phones dying in horror films. That's just
no reception.
Yeah, there's no reception.
I was at Pineapple Express. I remember them just being like, like there's a scene where we just decide that we can't have our cell phones, so we throw them in the woods. It's like we had to have that scene. We just had to.
So I like this level. I like that idea of seeing it look terrible with the old graphics, so I thought for sure this is not what you're supposed to do. But you can see there's like that pit where there's the coolant way down at the bottom. It's like, okay, well, clearly I'm supposed to dodge that. Then it's like, oh no, wait, actually things are so intense that that's actually what you're supposed to do is jump down into this coolant. It's a fun little 180 full reversal there. And I kind of like, just as overall theme for the second half of this game, how there's areas, like I guess 343 is Guilty Spark on that second half of that level specifically. For the first time, you see stuff on the radar and you're running away from it as Master Chief. Like that first half, it's like, oh, radar points to where I'm supposed to be going. And then this level, or the second half, there's areas where it's like, okay, when there's a sea of red, you actually should be going the opposite direction, which is a fun pivot. Let's see. Sutton wrote in, said this game confirms that Master Chief can literally rip someone's effing face out of their head. Rest in peace, Captain Keyes. Yeah, poor Captain Keyes. So there's a lot of fighting. The Flood are coming out of the ooze. Is that how you read it as well?
No, I just thought they were hanging out.
Just hanging out in the ooze, just a little ooze bath.
I mean, I thought the ooze was just...
They're like jumping off of cliffs and landing in the ooze.
Right, and this one has a lot of
just like leakage
fighting
from the ship. It's kind of right. Did I misinterpret that?
I don't know what that was. But you eventually then make your way, and find Commander Keyes. But he was over the radio beforehand, being like, "Don't come in here." Don't come in here. And then you get there and realize that, boy, has he changed into just a giant monstrosity. What was that? What was it?
Why did they do that?
Why he do that?
Flood transformation, right? Like, I guess maybe that's part of the process of turning into the Flood.
So everybody turns into like this gigantic thing and then shrinks back down?
I guess. I don't know.
It's because he's important. So.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, he's actually mostly made up of goo while he's in that cocoon, actually.
Oh, the cocoon.
And he's still the same species when he comes out.
Yeah.
I did like during that part that, you get there and you see him and Cortana's like, what he'd want you to do. And it's like, apparently punch through his effing face.
I know.
So,
but
a little harsher than
I was so confused about what happened. So I switched to the new graphics and like, I still don't have any clarity after the fact now looking at this like a crime scene. Like, did I just rip out his face? What is going on?
I also, in that situation, I don't know that I would stop there. Just because you don't understand the physiology of the flood. It's like, oh yeah, I punched out his head. I guess he can just maybe grow another one. Who knows? Like why wouldn't you just blow up the rest of it instead of, no, I got his face. That's what matters. He's done. Don't worry about him anymore.
He's done now.
I mean, you're essentially grabbing like a USB like flash drive. From him, right? Like,
right.
Was it not in his pocket? Like, wouldn't he just like root through his pockets in his jacket or something?
You could only see it with the remastered graphics, but his tongue was actually a USB drive in the cutscenes. So yeah,
as intended.
Yeah. BeatenDownBrian says it's probably a pretty well-known Easter egg as it's tied to an achievement, but after you find Captain Keyes and the cutscene plays, if you follow one of the tentacles just to the right of him, you can find his pipe hanging from the end of it. It's a small, unnecessary detail that they didn't really need to add, but it makes me happy that they did.
This is also the start of like, I feel like the Covenant using grenades 900% more often.
Yes.
I feel like this and the last level definitely count for maybe 80 to 90% of the instances where an enemy threw a sticky grenade at me. Whereas before you'd see it every once in a while, but it's like there's just like immediately after you kill Keyes, there's just that hallway that opens up and there's like two grunts that are just like holding live grenades and throwing them at you. And that's like one of those things where it's like 50% people die like that first time. And then it's like, okay, I guess I better watch out for the grenades.
Yes. This checkpoint was one of the roughest for me is after Keyes. Yeah. Where you go down to the left and then it is the two grunts with grenades. And I just had to be like, okay, I'm just going to back up and then sit back, watch the chaos. And it is still really impressive seeing how chaotic that gets with just Master Chief off to the side. Like, if anybody walks over here, I'll shotgun him, but that's all I'm going to be doing here, just watching the carnage.
Yeah, it's interesting to see like how proud they were of that AI stuff that, it works. Those enemy factions do fight each other in believable ways, but it definitely feel like, well, we put so much work into this. We want players to see how much work we put into the AI. Into the enemy AI, and so like they have multiple instances where that works. And I think like even early on in that first area where you're kind of making your way into these like kind of spiraling paths that lead into these very narrow hallways where you're seeing the blood fight the Covenant. I feel like those are the best instances of just like there's just chaos happening around me. Like it's like almost set dressing that you can fight your way through, but it feels like this is when that effect is strongest of like I'm just part of this larger conflict.
Yeah, your mic was weird for a second there, Serial. Just tap on it twice. There's also sections here where I was trying to fight my way down to the Banshee and I was just getting wrecked over and over again. Then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna jump down and kind of Skyrim down this thing, and then got to the Banshee and I'm great. It's triggering the next cutscene.
Yeah. Which is like, it's always rough because I think that can kind of, you can take that either like, oh, this is a really cool kind of open-ended sandbox that lets me get away with this kind of stuff. Yeah. But I always find those kinds of exits kind of unsatisfying where I don't feel like I did it the quote proper way. So I feel like I kind of, even though it wasn't cheating, it just feels like, I kind of robbed myself of like whatever this encounter was supposed to be.
But it's that good cheese, like we mentioned. I feel like it does feel maybe unsatisfying, but you feel empowered by like, I outsmarted the game.
And I had so many problems with checkpoints during this section that I felt very good when I did basically the exact same thing, because I did not want to have to fight down through 3 levels or whatever and get lost along the way just to get back down there. Yeah, I kind of hopped down to the second level, landed on the ground without any shields, and then just spammed that button, and I was so happy when it took off.
Yeah.
I think this level also, I don't know how it went for you guys, but I feel like it has the worst instance of pathing in like the game so far for me, where you go down, like you enter the ship and you're kind of in that hangar area, and then you basically have to backtrack a couple of hallways to get to the second floor of that hangar area. I don't know if you guys remember, like where you're kind of in that area where the dropships can enter. And I ended up fighting in the ground level and was trying to figure out how, like, which of these open and doors closed get me up to the higher level. Yeah. But it turns out you basically have to backtrack like several hallways for you to go back into the second floor. And so I spent like way too much time trying to figure out why this area was even like, why would they even let you get to that hangar area and not give you an easy way up if you're supposed to just basically go around and not ever really see that part of the level.
Right. Yeah.
And still fill it with enemies.
Because you know the game has trained you up to this point that for the most part, when you see enemies, you're going the right way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Then we get to the Maw. We're back to the Pillar of Autumn. Clearly, they're huge Twisted Pixel fans, calling this level the Maw. It's the greatest homage of all time. Yeah. So back in this level, I thought this level was awesome. I had no idea you'd be going back, but just like it's a good example of taking an environment the ship, the opening level, just putting it in a slightly different environment, and it feels so different and cool. You change the music, make it all that light choir, you make it all deserty outside. I love this level. I thought it was really cool.
It is the best use of like taking you back to a familiar area and tweaking it just enough where it feels like time has passed there. Like I really do like the final level a lot, even though it is based in the first level, which I don't particularly like in a weird way. It just works really well to go back to it and be like, man, a lot of stuff. We've been on a real journey here. I mean, the windows are broken, you know?
Yeah, it has that great feeling of like, you know, I just went to go look out the window and then the Sentinels came in and it just reinforced that idea of, yeah, this place is effed. Like, we need to nuke everything from orbit because look what happened to our ship alone and just this situation that we're now in.
I think it also benefits from it being the repetition that happens, you know, that has the most distance, where, you know, it's like the bookends of the game. So you kind of feel like, oh, now we're back to this versus our earlier ones where it's like, oh, I just did this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
And I think this is like a really cool kind of reversal of that first level. That also had maybe to me the most frustrating part of the entire game with the having to throw the grenades into the vents.
Yes, well, we can get to that in a bit. Yeah, for sure.
Real quick, the view of the desert outside is another instance where I feel like the old graphics still like convey such a different and better feeling to me than the new ones, because when you switch to the new ones, they kind of have like different mesas and stuff and just kind of fill out, you know, what you're looking at. Whereas with the old graphics, it's just this one long, like completely flat, completely desolate desert that you're looking out. And it just feels more sci-fi and I think fit the tone better of going back to this dead carcass of a ship that you're going through.
Yeah, for sure. I was confused by the little bit of lore here where Guilty Spark gets in the data banks of Cortana and the Pillar of Autumn, and he's like, all of our lost time, all of human history, I'm absorbing it all. Like, I know some things about Guilty Spark and his backstory and stuff, but just that idea, so he was plugged in so he could just understand everything about Cortana and humanity.
He just likes data. It was like my read on it. He just loves information and absorbing information and like learning about this new sort of race that he was unfamiliar with. My kind of read on it, you know?
Right.
But then there is also the implication of the idea that like the Covenant doesn't know where Earth is or, you know, what's going on there. And I wonder if that was part of that. But
well, he's plugged into the ship, so he gets a lot of that data from there, right? Like like whatever archives they have. And so he's just like really freaking out about how much info there is in there, right? Because he doesn't know anything about humans. So it's like, oh, here's his entire history that I can learn basically from either extrapolating or directly in the archives of the ships.
But like that idea of the Covenant not knowing where Earth is becomes a much bigger detail in the future. Like, I mean,
well, that's Halo 2, right? Is when you come to Earth.
Yeah, I mean, the beginning of Halo 2, which I not to dive too deep into Halo 2, one of the things I really love about the story of Halo 2 is like the Covenant shows up on Earth and they got there by accident. Like they didn't realize, they didn't find Earth and go there. They found this beacon and went to it, and they were like, "Oh crap, this is Earth," which is like a kind of a cool idea.
I love that.
And like, I don't know if that plays into that a little bit. Like, Guilty Spark figured out where Earth was, but like shared it with the Covenant somehow. I don't know. I'm kind of confused by that. You know?
Huh. Yeah, it's very fun trying to piece Halo lore together just from the multiplayer. It's like, okay, yeah, Halo 2, they must have found Earth because there's that Mombasa level or whatever. Like, I think that makes sense.
And where's Beaver Creek and all this?
Where's the battle at Beaver Creek? Okay, and then also Guilty Spark wants the construct, which is how they are controlling Halo. It's one of those things where he keeps screaming, Reclaimer, give me the construct. I don't think I know what the construct is exactly.
That's the flash drive you took from Keyes' face, isn't it?
Okay. And that is the control of Halo.
I thought the flash drive was for the Pillar of Autumn, though.
No.
And then
because the Pillar of Autumn is the human ship, right?
Yeah, but the Pillar of Autumn is what you needed to get from the thing you had to get from Keyes to blow up the Pillar of Autumn.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So you need the construct.
It's almost as if all these names make things much more complicated.
No, the names are great. But then what was the index? That was the thing you got at the. That's what you needed to get before.
The index was in the library, which is what the monitor took you to find.
Okay, and the monitor. That's the thing. Just give everybody one name. Call them Guilty Spark. This monitor thing is confusing.
Yeah, the construct was, I think, the other key looking thing that Master Chief got much earlier.
Okay.
I think.
Look, Halo fans, we're sorry. We're coming into this thing a little cold.
What it did. I mean, there's nothing for us to apologize, Hanson. We just all played through the entire game. It's just the way that they approach the storytelling.
Yeah.
Gets
tricky.
This
is the experience that we had in terms of like trying to understand it. This is what they offered within the game.
Right.
And it's confusing to us. And there is extracurricular reading if you want to go seek that out. But in terms of what's presented here in the game, like that's what we're talking about. And it is confusing.
Isn't it? Well, I'm looking here. Construct can mean many things in the Halo lore. It's a Halo 3 multiplayer map. It is an artificial intelligence and like an AI construct, commonly referred to as a construct, especially by 343 Guilty Spark in the Halo trilogy. So maybe the construct just... Yeah, that might be what it means.
Yeah, so Ludo in the Backstage Pass live chat, he says construct refers to an AI like Cortana. And then Ben Fitter says index is the key to activating Halo.
Okay, so Master Chief has the index. Guilty Spark wants Cortana because she's got a lot of interesting information. And he likes information.
There we go. Okay. We haven't mentioned it, but has anybody watched that Polygon video that's pretty recent where it's... Brian David Gilbert, that's his name, right? I always forget the three names that throw me off. But he had a video where he read he is not a Halo fan, hasn't played the games, but he read every Halo book and reviewed them.
I haven't watched it, but I saw, that was an interesting idea. I was kind of curious to get the feedback on.
It's a very fun video. I think, especially, since we're primed after playing Halo 1, you should go and watch it, Kyle. It's one of those things, it's like, it's half an hour long. I don't know, but it's very funny. Like, the guy is just on another level. Brian W. writes in and says, here's why Halo 1 is the best. It's the end of the game and things haven't gone as planned. You just bashed in your commander's brains after he fell to the enemy and you're flying back to where the game started, the Pillar of Autumn. The music keys in, all the emotion of your journey with sweeping cameras to reveal the ship, your last hope, teetering on a cliff. Chief flies in, worn from his epic journey. Will this broken down Banshee make it? Pull up, Cortana shouts just before the ship crashes as it explodes on the side of the Autumn. Much like the crash landing on the Halo itself, the Chief grabs hold and pulls himself up. Now framed in familiar circular iconography, Chief stands alone, once more ready to finish the fight. Brian W., Halo's #1 fan. Flowery as hell, but we love it. It is a cool entry into this level. Darren says, the Flood were pretty cool for an hour. Then they just never let up for the rest of the game, and I slowly began to hate their existence. A large chunk of my frustration with the second half basically revolves around the Flood. They just eat up bullets, and the only good weapon late in the game for me was a shotgun and pistol. That's true. The final mission, in particular, is one of my least favorite missions in the game. It has bad checkpoints, and the never-ending swarm of enemies while I look for grenades to blow up the reactor thing was beyond irritating. I cannot imagine doing that mission on any level above normal. I mostly enjoyed the game, but the second half was really, really frustrating at times.
Did no one go get the rocket launcher?
Y'all did go to the armory.
Yeah, Serial, did you go?
The armory was closed. She told me go downstairs, go to the armory, and you can just find infinite weapons. I went to that door. It was closed.
You went to the wrong door, man.
Yeah, wrong door, dude.
There was an arrow underneath it that said armory, and here is the arrow.
No, there's a typo.
Door was closed.
Maybe there was a back door or something, but yeah, I just went to that armory. And I thought this was going to be the most common comment, which explains that all this stuff's unpredictable. But the armory is just filled with rocket launchers and all this stuff. And then there's an invisible big guy. What's he called?
Elite.
Was it just an elite? I thought it was.
Well, there's an invisible flood in there too.
Yeah.
The invisible flood. That's what it was. Yes. I'm sorry. It was a flood guy. But I thought that was going to be the most common comment was like, how cool is that invisible flood guy? Nobody wrote in about it, but that's fine. But yeah, so you just load up on rocket launchers. So I didn't even have to go back and restock.
Cortana tells you, go to the entrance of whatever, go to the armory, and that I followed the arrows on the floor that said armory, and that door was closed.
No, stop being an idiot, Serial. Just go to the armory.
Okay, what you needed to do was kind of get lost on your way to the engine room.
Yes.
Just happen to luck into the area on your way there, and then be like, there's a lot of rocket launchers here. I should probably take one.
Just like the Covenant found Earth.
The other option is you just stream that level, and then people tell you where the armory is.
The other thing is that you just resort to getting a checkpoint where you have one grenade, and if you lob it and it misses, you just reload the checkpoint. And you do that until you actually get all 4 of them, which is a fun time. Let me tell you.
It's funny. I do like the change of objective. Honestly, it was tough. I died a lot. But I actually kind of enjoyed the sort of basketball nature of trying to get a grenade in there. But then I did most of them with rocket launchers. But I like that it was all right, you're in this room. You have 4 objectives. You have to press the button to move the things. It's weirdly the final boss fight in a weird way. It's
harder than
I enjoyed it. I liked it. I don't know.
I liked it too. And the environment felt like a multiplayer map by the end of it. You know it pretty well. Okay, the winding up, you got the other levels, then you have to do that little bit of platforming where because those pistons are moving, I think that's kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, which although with that one, I don't know if it was just me, but those drums that you have to get on top of to get on the platform, it seems like there's just a little weird geometry, those little clips on the side make you fall off every time.
Yeah.
But yeah, the engine room is one thing that I had remembered and was dreading at this point getting to because I had such a hard time with it, the original 20 years ago or whatever, but it went much smoother this time, and I felt like the flood wasn't as much of a problem. You could actually clear out an area, and then they didn't spawn back too much, as you had to make your way up those ramps a couple more times. So it was a little more forgiving than I remembered, but I had a dozen rockets with me.
Yeah,
so.
the flood weren't a problem; they were my lifeblood for getting more grenades. So I definitely appreciated that they spawned as much as they did. They weren't that big of a problem.
I was confused about the actual vents that you're shooting into. Were they alternating? Open and close?
They were opening and closing, yeah.
Okay, I couldn't quite tell because I was just lobbing rockets. It seems like it can go through, but it can't sometimes. I didn't understand. Kate Mead writes in and says, I really enjoyed the final mission with the air vents, and if anyone didn't know, you can crouch jump to skip having to drop and run back up the stairs in that section. Also, it would have been nice to get a heads up that the grunts were suddenly packing Covenant rockets. Yeah, the Covenant rockets is an interesting detail. I feel like I was doing a lot of that skipping by crouching and doing a lot of weird navigating through that space just to make the most of those runs. I love when you have one more vent to go, one more vent to blast, that the music changes. The music gets sweet and beautiful and choral again, and it's nice. Choral? How do you say that? Choral?
Chorals.
Right? Choral?
I can't say choral with a straight face.
I'm also just super appreciative that they actually put checkpoints in between each one of the engines that you had to blow up, because they really could have botched that.
Oh yes, yeah, for sure. And there was plenty of health on the bottom. It was hanging on the racks there and stuff. So it was right. Also, that was tricky. Maybe you lucked out, Serial, because not having the rocket launcher. I think you had the better way to go, because it was tricky because it's okay, one weapon has to be the rocket launcher. I need the shotgun for the flood, but then the assault rifle is going to be bad for the flood, but I want the assault rifle for some sort of distance because there's a lot of distance shooting at these things too. So I felt like it was one of those Halo dilemmas of what is the ideal weapon loadout here?
I was just kind of screwed with the Sentinels and just tried to avoid them as much as I could. Yeah, because I just did not have a good answer for them.
I definitely did not feel lucky. I definitely would have preferred having a rocket launcher for those. I think that I could have cut off a good 10 minutes if I had a rocket launcher.
Chris Culkins writes in, remember that elite or multiple, if you're playing on harder difficulties, that ambushes you on the elevator right before the big Warthog escape? He's holding
2 grenades.
His name is Zuka Zamami, and he has been dogging you the whole game, trying to kill you, and that was supposed to be his big moment, which you can read more about in the novelization of Halo Combat Evolved titled Halo: The Flood by William C. Dietz. Right. I love that this guy has this big moment. It's like Marauder Shields in Mass Effect 3 or something. There's like some random guy apparently has this whole saga.
Or, Metal Gear Solid 5.
Or Metal Gear Solid 5. Hang on, what do you?
Or a million characters in Star Wars where they're like, I'm going to write a book about that guy.
Right. Dengar, he's huge. Crater says the Warthog escape at the end of Halo was and is one huge adrenaline pumping escapade. When I first played through Halo back in the day, it was exhilarating cherry on top of that whole adventure that really led to a feeling of I did it, I beat the game, and it still holds up today. Mark Ramirez says, I love, quote, everything is going to blow up, get out end sequences, especially Halo, which usually ends with you driving the janky Warthog, bouncing and flipping your way to the end. Mm-hmm. The first one was a little rougher on the edges, but it was the start of a trend with the series that would improve over time. Also, co-op, trying to crash / mesh with your buddies while trying to escape is the best. I love that. Seeing that Warthog come back, it's like, oh, of course this has to come back. And then it was, for me at least, the jankiest ride imaginable. It's just, all right, whatever.
It is a bold design choice to say, like, okay, let's end our game highlighting the worst mechanic we have in this game with how that thing controls. But
how dare you?
It was something that another thing that I looked forward to just based on my memories of it the first time. And yeah, it feels really great when you're having a good run and it's like, man, I just barely made that jump. That feels so good. But then when you like get it wedged and you're like doing the Austin Powers back and forth trying to get that thing
it just feels like you're interrupting their set piece, this should be this thrilling escape, and then as soon as Cortana is like talking about, I don't know if she was referring to like getting out entirely or like a specific jump, but she was like, oh yeah, if you do this you should be able to clear it, and then as she's saying that line, it's just bonk me on like the tip of that hallway, just completely eating shit on that area. It was such a weird, like, okay, well, obviously you want this to go one way, but it is currently not the way it is going for me.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of just games in general that sort of save the like final challenging boss fight as the second to last thing.
Yeah.
Like you had a challenging boss fight, now here's a fun finale. And I feel like that's Halo is like a good example of that.
It's very Metal Gear Solid 1, I guess. It's not the most fun, but like just like the shooting liquid in the car as you're working right out of the tunnel, that type of thing.
Like, and I like that. And I do wish that it was just kind of a straight shot, because they do have there are moments where you have to swerve around. Like they have barriers up, and it's like, I think it would have been just as effective and more fun if it was just straight shot, a lot of jumps and just enemies, sort of sprinkled around that you can run over. Like I don't think it had to be so weaving,
Yeah, it wouldn't even have to be like a straight line. You could be taking like L turns and stuff like that. But I think one of my frustrations with that specific thing that you mentioned, Kyle, is like the post-boss kind of set piece, is that they always kind of want to make it more interesting than it should be, where it's like, oh, well, like maybe you should be able to die during this thing because we want some sort of stakes. And it's just like, no, just make it so that I can't get, like, it's supposed to be like the triumphant moment. Don't overthink it, or like introduce too many ideas that are going to make people botch. They're like what should be the thrilling escape.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I really like the Pelican coming in and then crashing.
That is a cool moment. Yeah.
I love that, like, night is darkest before the dawn or whatever, kind of like, this was your escape. This was your goal. And at the last second it fell through. Now what?
It's
and it's not, and then now what is like, oh, you just keep going the other way and you're totally fine. But it's like emotionally, I think it's effective and cool. Like I totally kept the camera on the Pelican and watched it go down, like fully embraced the moment.
Yeah, it's the Scatman Crothers in The Shining, right? I'm just like, hey, it's here. Okay.
It is weird though, like even as someone who hadn't seen it before, it's like the moment that I saw more runway and then I look at the Pelican, it's like, oh, it's smoking. Yeah, I'm just gonna go. You like I'm 100% certain this thing is not going to go well, so I'm just going to go.
Yeah. The ending was kind of a bummer. In a thing like Aliens, it is that satisfying feeling of like, this is effed. We need to get off this planet and nuke it from orbit. We need to send this all to hell. But I like the Halo. I think we all like the Halo. So it's like, I don't want to blow it up, but I guess we have to, because I guess I don't have to fight the flood anymore. That seems to make sense.
Wait. So that's what you're talking about? More than the everyone is dead angle?
Oh.
I just like the giant ring, man.
I mean, who the hell was I supposed to care about? There's still a Marine.
Sergeant Johnson, that character you never see again.
I had no connection to any of those Marines. Yeah, Jenkins was the most guy I was connected to, and I think he's already dead with his helmet cam. But yeah, it was a bummer to see the cool thing blow up, just on a very simple level. But then that carries through, I think, with the tone of the ending too, is immediately Cortana was like, hey, we had no choice. Like, we had to do this. It's like this weird level of guilt throughout that entire ending. It was just a bummer. And then, they try and have that moment of Master Chief being like, hey, Halo isn't finished. I think we're just getting started. Wink, wink. I
think these Halos are infinite.
Yeah, but I was expecting it to be more triumphant, and it's just kind of oh boy. All right, the end.
Didn't help that, at least for me, there was no credit roll either.
Same here.
Which is kind of weird. I guess that's just a product of playing the Master Chief collection. I don't know.
Yeah, why wouldn't they include that? Or maybe it's because I went and at some point did like a level select to like restart a mission. And so maybe if you start doing the level select, then it gets rid of the end credits or something in Master Chief Collection. But I was waiting for that too, and nothing.
We all played on normal. Jeffem, did you stick with heroic? Or?
I stuck with heroic, yeah.
Okay. Because there is an alternate ending if you beat it on legendary.
And what is that?
It's not alternate. Okay. It's basically it cuts to Johnson like on the ground, standing next to Elite. I think they're like in the middle of a fist fight, and then they realize that the ship's about to blow up, and they're like, "Well, that's it," and they hug.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, and it's jokey and goofy, and I guess I could be wrong about this, but I believe in the original game, the Elite grabs Sergeant Johnson's butt while they're hugging.
What?
But then in the remake, Johnson grabs the Elite's butt. I could have them backwards, but it's like such a...
Johnson grabbed first? Is that what's...
I guess, yeah. And then in Halo 2, in the beginning of Halo 2, like, Johnson's there. And, like... Yeah. And Master Chief is like, how did you survive? And he has just, like, a throwaway line that's, like, a gag that's like, it's classified. I can't talk about it.
Really?
Classified?
Yeah.
Who's Master Chief gonna tell? It's not like he's on Twitter.
That's insane, because it seems like a big beat at the end is like, we're the only survivors. We are it. Yeah. So for them just
Johnson
to go back
survived canonically. Yeah.
That's insane. Somebody also mentioned that apparently there's a scene after the credits, but that wasn't an option because I didn't get credits, that it shows that Guilty Spark survived as well.
Oh, that does seem familiar. Yeah. I mean, he shows up.
I remember that, but I didn't see that.
Yeah.
I don't know when I saw that, but apparently... Unless that's like a Mandela effect that we're all...
Right. No, somebody mentioned it somewhere, I think.
I have a memory of it. I think, yeah.
Yeah. Colin Perkins in the Backstage Pass, the live chat, he says, Johnson isn't an official character until Halo 2. What does that mean? He's in Halo 1.
He's
a named character.
That dude's real.
He's real.
He's my friend.
He's real in our hearts.
Yeah. And that's it. That's how the grand journey wraps up. Serial, what do you think of the ending?
I mean, I remember the thing where he takes off the helmet, but the camera pans in such a way that you don't see him. We've never seen that guy's head, right? Like,
I believe if you beat Halo 4 on Legendary, they show a close-up of his face. I could be wrong about that.
Oh, do they really?
Wait, really?
Yeah. I think so, yeah.
I thought it was just another shot.
I could be wrong about that. Maybe
I
believe
take a look at the chat, it's just him like slowly taking off his armor.
No, I think you see his eyes. I think it's like a close up on his eyes, which is I think the closest that we get.
Interesting. Well, Jared Duddy, writes in about that, saying, so the original Halo ends with your video game setup of a lifetime after Master Chief basically says to the player, find out what happens next in Halo 2. He spends just enough time taking off his helmet for the ship to block his face. Ever since, Halo fans have been wondering, what does the green shooty man look like? I think keeping this mystery alive will definitely add some mystique to the character, but I have a question for y'all. With Infinite being marketed as the last Halo for a very long time, will Master Chief's face reveal itself by the end of the game? Personally, I don't think 343 would do it, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I don't think so. I mean, what's the satisfying conclusion there? He takes it off and he's like an elite? Like, yeah, I mean, he's just going to look like a guy.
He's going to look like
they have an actor or something. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's George Clooney. They got the George Clooney.
It's Brad Pitt, and he's like,
yeah.
Oh,
I don't know. I just don't see it being satisfying in any way, really.
Yeah, that's one of those.
Like, why not? It's more fun to be mysterious than to reveal it, it's like the Photoshop in Mass Effect, right? Like with Talia, right? Is that the character's name?
Tali.
Just keep it a mystery.
Tali?
It's more fun that way.
Yeah.
God, what is...
Well, or at least don't use a stock photo that people on the internet can trace back.
Yes, Tali, the from the proud race of the Getty. Apparently Ben Fitter in the chat, he says that Halo 4's legendary ending had that, and then apparently the guilty spark floating off into space was in the legendary ending of Halo 1 as well, in addition to your bud shot.
Okay, so that's the legendary. Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Andrew Burns has had an interesting take saying, I think in this second half of the game, the versatility of Halo's weapons really shine. The shotgun absolutely wrecks the Flood, while it's really risky to use against elites as they pelt you with the plasma rifle. The plasma pistol, meanwhile, while it's not great against the Flood, can destroy an elite's shield with a single charge shot. The Needler is effective against both, but it's easy to get swarmed when using it. Meanwhile, the sniper can crown an elite at a distance, no problem, but it is completely useless against the Flood. Mixing and matching combinations for each situation becomes a really fun strategic dance in missions like the 2 Betrayals, one of the best missions in the game, and Keys, one of the worst, when contending with both groups intermittently. Also, screw this game's checkpoint system. Yes, that's a good point. The rock, paper, scissors aspect of the guns, I feel like at a higher difficulty, I would have really had to understand. But in general, I just kind of avoided the Covenant weapons, and then it was okay. The shotgun was great for Flood, was really the only weapon math I did, and I'm sure I was playing it wrong.
I mean, when I wasn't aware of the one hit kill on the hunters with the pistol, so I would use the Covenant pistol on them because you could just charge a shot on their back, and that would be pretty effective. But I think it's something that they make more explicit in Destiny, is like how this weapon counters this weapon, so they make that a lot easier to understand. Whereas here, it's like if you don't know for sure, like you have to test out a sniper rifle on the Flood, for example. Mm-hmm. You have no reason to believe that it wouldn't be super effective against them since it crowns anything else. But I like that. I like that helps you build kind of this understanding and mastery of the game. Of like, okay, I know how these weapons work, so I feel more invested in doing well.
Yeah,
it's really wild to me that even from Destiny 1, how many weapons are in the game. Because like weapon balance has always been like a huge priority for Bungie. Like I remember interviews about Halo 2. This was, early online. DLC was not really an established thing, but people were like, could you add to the game? Like it was this novel idea. Like, could you add to the game after you're done? And Bungie was like, you know what? We're considering the idea of adding maps, which they did deliver on eventually, right? Because they had the map pack that you could buy. But one thing they said is like, we will not be adding weapons. Weapons are too difficult to balance. We don't want to... Adding one weapon will just throw the whole thing off. So while you may see levels being added in the future, you will never see weapons. And so it's funny to me that like Bungie now... Destiny is just like this, huge collection of weapons. Like I guess they figured something out that they were happy with. Yeah. But there was a time when they were like, weapon balancing is the most difficult aspect of making a Halo game.
Right. And what you end up with is like a lot of the guns, even though they look different, they kind of stick to these kind of archetypes. So like, even within auto rifles, which are basically assault rifles, they are like maybe like X number of assault rifles that stick to different aspects. And then they mostly balance around the exotics, which are like the most unique guns that are like this gun makes you play the game completely differently because of its trait. And those are the ones that they really have to balance. And then what ends up happening is that there is kind of like this very slow power creep where it's like, besides one or two weapons, it's like the newer weapons are usually at some point end up being the most useful thing. And then they kind of just nerf them when the new weapons come out. And it's kind of like this cyclical thing of like, at some point we're going to buff this weapon because no one's using it and it's a cool weapon we like. And then it'll end up coming back into rotation. So that's kind of how they ended up balancing stuff there.
Gotcha. I was really annoyed when they kept swapping my weapons at the start of a new mission. I was like, wait, now I have this Covenant thing? I don't want that. I had my classic assault rifle shotgun thing.
Drop it immediately.
Jerome wrote in and says, I got an achievement for playing on the 15th. I have no idea what this means, but I'm betting one of you Halo fans knows.
I also got that achievement. I also do not know why.
Weird. Well, somebody in the comments can help us out, I'm sure. Sean Mills.
The 1/17th day of the year. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sean Mills says, as a follow-up to your conversation about the name Truth and Reconciliation, I want to let you know where that phrase comes from. It refers to judicial bodies that countries will set up to judge political crimes from the past. The most famous example is from South Africa, who created this commission after the fall of apartheid. It focuses on uncovering truth and finding ways to heal victims and repair the country.
Interesting.
That is interesting. I had no
Well,
idea.
then it makes perfect sense that the Covenant would name them after what we do.
Well, it's our nicknames for everything. It's all confusing. One quick one here from Wally and Sorry again.
Why would we name their ship the Truth and Reconciliation though?
It's complicated. Anyways,
When
Wally
they're
and
coming to
Sorry.
kill us.
Wally says, "Hey, let's play UNSC ships or not. I'll provide some names, and you
Beautiful.
guys determine whether these ships are Halo canonical ships. You ready? The UNSC 2 for flinching. Is that real, Kyle?
Better not be.
No.
Okay. Well, we'll save these. Jeffem, the UNSC Weeping Willows. Is that a real one?
Yeah.
Suriel, the ship Do You Feel Lucky?
No.
Okay, Kyle, the UNSC Walk of Shame.
No.
Jeffem, the UNSC Wink of an Eye.
Yeah.
Answer, these are all real ship names from the Halo universe. The UNSC 2 for flinching is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Shame.
I take back everything I said criticizing Bungie's naming schemes. That's
Brilliant.
Man, they really fell from Pillar of Autumn, which is at least a very cool name, to, I don't know, Walk of Shame.
Yeah, maybe, I'm sure it's some expanded universe stuff. Maybe it's not all Bungie to be blamed for this. Colin Perkins in the Deepest Dive, the Backstage Pass for the Deepest Dive live chat, he says that Combat Evolved was released on the 15th of November originally. So that's the honor of the 15th. There we go. Thank you for being so smart, everybody in the MinnMax community. And thank you to everybody that submitted a wonderful comment. Thanks for playing along. Heroes. Thank you, everybody. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. Thanks for playing along. Sentiment seemed to be a lot of people playing through it for the first time, which is impressive. I guess, if Cyril and I are playing it through for the first time, there's a lot of other folks that have always been meaning to do it. And so it's a nice one to check off the list. And it feels a little bit like the Chrono Trigger Deepest Dive, where people are like, I have been meaning to get to that forever. So it's nice to finally understand what this whole thing's about. Other big conclusive thoughts on Halo 1 from y'all?
Holds up pretty well overall.
Yeah, I like it overall. I don't think I think it's obviously aged in a couple ways. Even at the time, I think a lot of the complaints about the level design are valid, but you definitely see I totally see why people really fell in love with this.
Yes, it's a weird thing, but playing through it, my overall sensation was like, oh yeah, Halo is cool, which is something I haven't thought about in a long time, but there's something just mysterious and open and just classy about Halo 1. It's just a cool game, which you forget. And I was glad to be able to tap back into that vibe of just, oh yeah, this thing is cooler than I am. Because I think in the years since, it's just, Mountain Dew, Halo, Xbox, you get it. And you forget what a cool vibe this first game has.
Yeah, and I do like that overall tone, and especially at the end, I like that it's essentially still just a story where you're saving the universe, even though the thing that you do to save it seems very small gameplay wise. Like I shot some rockets into some vents, and that saved the universe. But I like that it's a save the universe story, but the way that you're saving it is kind of depressing, and it's all very ad hoc put together, where it's like, okay, like everyone else that you had been with is dead, and now we just have to blow this up, and we're probably going to die too while we do it, but this is what we have to do because someone has to save the day.
Yeah, the fact
it's kind of that classic, like martyrdom.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I think that the fact that there is no the set solution that you were looking for earlier in the game is totally not viable for you, and that you end up kind of putting together your own solution to the problem, I think is a pretty cool kind of twist on that idea.
Yeah, absolutely. It made me think a lot about challenging what I thought I knew from classic games, and also made me think about, how much do I know about Halo's plot moving forward? Like Halo 2. So, Cyril, you also haven't played Halo 2.
I have not played Halo 2, no.
So let's try
and guess.
I
played the multiplayer.
So, okay, we know the Covenant come to Earth. Yep, I've also just played a lot of the multiplayer. I know there is a giant plant you talk to. Gravemind? Is that his name?
Yeah.
I know
you play as a character other than Master Chief.
Yes, the Arbiter. And I know it has a frustrating ending because it gets cut off.
Yeah.
Dual wielding.
There you go.
And that's
it was
the plot of Halo
wild
2.
to be like working at a GameStop at the height of Halo 2's release, just in terms of hype.
Yeah.
And, like, excitement. And then a few days later, everyone coming in and be like, F that game. That ending sucks. I'm
Really?
And I blame you for it.
It was so funny, like, talking to people, because they really were brutally mad about it. And I was like, it was weird to me at the time, because I was like, I'm playing multiplayer and having a blast. Like, that's such a small part of the game to me. But, like, people be like, man, if I review that game, I give it like a 6. Like, because of the last cutscene? That seems like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
To be fair, it is a very stupid cutscene, Kyle.
I mean, to be fair, yes, it's not a great ending, but I was just always surprised at how harsh people were on it for that reason. So
Yeah. Halo 3, I have no idea what happens. I've played the first mission, I think, in Halo 3. I've never really played Halo 3's multiplayer, which I know is insane, but I didn't have a 360 at the time. I don't know. Cyril, you mentioned the Flood comes back in Halo 3. I mean, is it a spoiler to talk about these things? Like, I have no idea which Halos have Floods, which have Halos. Have any of them focused?
Good to avoid it. I mean, if a lot of people are playing Halo for the first time, and it sounds like some folks are making their way through the series.
Okay.
I mean, they just added Halo 3 to the Master Chief Collection on PC, so I imagine there's quite a few new people playing it.
Okay, but maybe this won't be a spoiler. Are there other Halos in the Halo series, like, that you play on before Infinite here?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is there a Halo?
I'm almost certain. Now I'm second guessing myself, but like I'm almost certain that you go to other Halos. I mean,
is Halo 3 on a Halo?
Multiple Halos.
The early parts are definitely on Earth, but I don't remember if you end up going to a Halo in 3.
Do you go on a Halo in 2?
I'm pretty sure you do. Yeah.
Okay. The chat seems to say yes. There are more Halos. Yeah. Okay, and the Flood is in 3.
The Flood is in 3.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's
I remember them looking like less scary with the Xbox 360 visuals. Like, that's like a weird distinct memory I have.
They were trying to shake my hand?
I also remembered the introduction of the Flood wrong, and so I'm assuming I'm remembering it from a different game.
Yeah.
Like later in the series, because I was like, oh, that's not how they introduced them.
God, yeah. Okay, chat is lighting up all this stuff. So is it a spoiler to say the location of Halo 3?
I mean, it starts on Earth.
Okay. Then you eventually go to a place called the Ark.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember that.
Which creates Halos, apparently. This is fun stuff. Hey, thanks for letting us know the plot of these games that are very old, everybody in the chat. And then Halo 4, yeah. I get it. It's
like a reset.
The Forerunner stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then Halo 5, there's the blue team.
No one knows actually what happens at the end of Halo 5, because I think, everyone just played the first 3 levels.
Oh, okay.
Sergeant Locke.
Yeah. Big old Locke.
Cortana's in it.
I should go beat that game before Infinite.
You absolutely should.
Just go knock it out.
Yeah, go stream it, man. Hey, again, thank you to everybody in the MinnMax community that played along, listened to this whole thing, watched this whole thing. It's just incredible. If you enjoy the Game Club format, you can help support the Game Club format moving into the future by supporting us at that $5 tier where you unlock the podcast version, or at any tier where you can submit a comment for future installments of The Deepest Dive. But we're not done with Halo, folks. We'll be back next week talking all about Halo's multiplayer. So play some Halo multiplayer. We'll be streaming it on our Twitch channel. Again, you can follow us at MinnMax Show on Twitch. You can watch us play. You can laugh along with us, cry along with us, and then submit your comments on the game's multiplayer. I don't know how long that discussion is going to be. It's going to be an interesting one. So go to patreon.com/MinnMax2Ns, support us at any tier, and submit a comment for us to read about Halo's multiplayer. I'm excited to talk about the maps in particular. Let's really have the most in-depth Sidewinder discussion that's ever been had on the internet. Please. Any parting words from any of y'all?
Go finish the fight.
Hey.
Ward.
Let's finish the fight together. Hey, by the way, up there with Kyle's Halo joke, people have made the warthog joke. Like, people must have connected those two dots, right?
You're the first, man.
They have already now.
Hell yeah.
You did
Thanks
it.
so much, everybody. Warthog, bye! Do you want to get your name or Twitch or YouTube channel in the description of everything we release? Record a podcast with us, put a picture of your choice on MinnMax's TV, or a whole lot more? You can check out the benefits for supporting us on Patreon. If you support MinnMax at any tier on Patreon, you can submit questions or comments for us to read on the air, and you'll also get access to the wonderful MinnMax Discord. We need your help to keep this whole indie trainer rolling, so we'd appreciate it if you checked us out.